Ottawa.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, August 25th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 18 degrees, 17 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Police and the bailiff went to St. Bridget's Church after midnight to exercise an eviction order. There was a confrontation between the United People of Canada in that building and local residents. Witnesses say there were at least 2 swarmings of area residents. Heather lives in Lower Town and tells City News this morning she just wants this all to be over.
It's a roller coaster. We got our hopes up, we got our hopes smashed, we got our hopes up again, we got our hopes smashed. It's like we want to believe that what we understand to be a lawful eviction, with what we understand reported by everyone except for the church group. We want to see it happen.
Now, more on this coming up on the Rob Snow Show in moments. City News Time 9:01. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll have sun and cloud for the most part today. Just a slight chance of showers. A high about 26 degrees. Not quite as muggy as it was yesterday. Showers more likely through the late evening, especially overnight, though. 15 for the low. Today's high near 26.
And right now, 18 degrees in Ottawa, 17 in Smiths Falls. Players underway at the CP Women's Open at the Hunt Club. The best in women's golf teeing off. That started at 7 in the first round of this 4-round event. While most local fans are curious to see if Brooke Henderson can win her 13th professional event, they also wonder things like Lori Kane. It is her last appearance at this event, if this is a fitting swan song for her. Also, how will a 12-year-old from Vancouver do? There is one thing for certain. Chio is going to benefit from this tournament. Here's City News reporter Kurys.
The director of annual giving, Chantal Charbonneau, tells me it's time for some badly needed equipment upgrades in the cardiology department. And the tab on those machines gets picked up mainly by donors and outside support, like at the CP Women's Open. Here's just a few ways the foundation will be collecting this week.
There's going to be a putting challenge here where funds are going to be matched. During the tournament, there's going to be birdies, I think, on hold on T15 that CP will be matching $5,000 for each birdie.
In 2017, the last time the tournament was in Ottawa, the CHIO Foundation was the recipient of about $2 million, which also went towards an investment into a cat lab in the cardiology department. Kurys, City News.
City News Time 9:03. The Prime Minister hosting a second high-profile international visitor this week. It's NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg arriving in Canada today.
Stoltenberg and the Prime Minister are scheduled to tour a military radar site in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut, marking the first time any NATO chief has visited Canada's Arctic. Senior Canadian and NATO officials say the visit is meant to highlight that the region is a security priority in light of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and issues related to climate change. Earlier in the week, the Prime Minister was in Toronto and Newfoundland with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, whose visit was meant to strengthen the green energy ties between the two countries. Emily Joveski, The Canadian Press.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Whenever I play golf, I hope to shoot my age before the 9th hole. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Great looking day out there. Great day for a round of golf. Go, Brooke, go. Coming up, far removed from the Ottawa Hunt and Golf Club is St. Bridget's Church in Lower Town. And it's supposed to be move-in day. Get out of here. Get out of here. For Tupac. The United People of Canada ordered evicted. Failure to pay rent. Failure to have the appropriate insurance policy. That was all supposed to take effect at 1 minute past midnight. So look, we have a reporter on the scene. Kurys is there for us for City News this morning. He's been there for a few hours, working the neighborhood, talking to the locals. And he tells us the police have been there. And bailiffs have been there. And there are Tupac associated people there. And according to one resident of the area, it's been pretty tense at times over the last few hours. This is new tape. It's just into our newsroom in the last, 30 minutes or so. So let's listen. This is a local resident describing some of the scenes overnight to our news reporter, Kurys. Roll tape on that.
One person from the community that I recognize was on the driveway at the back entrance about the same time that a resident artist of the rectory was trying to access her parking space, and they both got swarmed, shoved around. There was certainly physical contact, and then had water guns, the huge water guns that have been in some of the pictures in the media lately, sprayed on them. Thankfully, it was just water as far as we can tell, but it was 100% terrifying mob mentality, and it's really, really scary to see it happening. And from my perspective, the situation is just escalating, and I'm really worried about what could happen.
Swarming, and you can hear her choking up at the end there. So in the meantime, I happened to see this clip on social media yesterday. Okay, it's social media. Okay, look, I don't know the full context of this comment. Okay, I'd be right up front with you. It's just something I came across when I was scrolling through social media. But according to the label on social media, this is one of the directors of the United People of Canada, named Diane Nolan, was a participant in the Freedom Convoy this winter. And anyway, so this was making the rounds on social media. It's a clip of her, and it sounds like she says, "I'm ready to die in this church. I'm ready to die in this church." Roll the tape.
This psychosis is real. We're so afraid to get involved because of our faith. You know what? And now who's going to take a step and make a difference in this world? I'm going to die in this place. I'm going to die in this place knowing that I've served God first.
Hey, play that one more time, okay?
This psychosis is real. We're so afraid to get involved because of our faith. You know what? And now who's going to take a step and make a difference in this world? I'm going to die in this place. I'm going to die in this place knowing that I've served God first.
Okay. So I don't like hearing that when it sounds like someone is willing to become a martyr because it's God's will or I'm serving God. Never good. Doesn't usually have a happy ending. So we're following that very closely. And in all seriousness, in just a few minutes from now, an update from the scene from Lowertown. We'll be joined by City News' Kurys. Also on the show this morning, a look at what's been happening at Queen's Park this week. It's been red hot. Really has been. Ontario politics this week. Andrew Brander, Lindsay Maskell back with us. One story that's really taken over the news agenda for the Queen's Park media this week. It's an important story. We're going to give it some attention this morning. It's this bill that was introduced on Friday, Bill 7. It's called More Beds, Better Care Act. The More Beds, Better Care Act. So it's about health care. And look, we need more beds in health care. We need better care, more timely access to health care. No doubt about that. And this is part of the Ford government's plan to provide it. I wonder, and a lot of people are wondering, whether this is the right way to go about it, whether this is the right way to go about getting more beds and better care. under the provisions in this bill, Bill 7, More Beds, Better Care Act, a very good account of it in the Globe and Mail this morning. Our CityNews colleague Cynthia Mulligan's been all over this story right from the very beginning. But under the provisions in Bill 7, okay, let me give you an example. Let's say there's an elderly person. They're in the hospital, acute care hospital, like the General or the Civic or the Queensway Carleton, an acute care hospital. They're taking up a hospital bed. They really don't need to be in the hospital. They shouldn't be in the hospital. In a hospital setting like that, where they really need to be is in a long-term care home. And they're on a wait list for a long-term care home. They've given their list to the authorities. You know, these are the homes that I would like to go to. I'm from the Ottawa area, and I click off these homes. You know, a bed becomes available in 2 or 3 years. This is where I'd like to go. Under Bill 7, that wouldn't matter anymore. And when a bed comes open, even if it's nowhere near where you live, at a town, whatever, let's say the person's from Ottawa, there's an opening in Arnprior or Renfrew or Smiths Falls or Brockville or something. The elderly person would have to take that bed, or they could face a charge, a fee, if you will, of as much as $1,800 a day. You heard me right. $1,800 a day. So, what's the elderly person going to do? Who has $1,800 a day to stay in the hospital? The Minister of Long-Term Care is Paul Calandra. And he says at a minimum, the person should have to pay the hospital a co-payment of, the media reports say it's either $62 or $63, depends on what news story you read this morning, but that the hospital has the power to charge $1,800 a day, and that the hospital has had the power to do that since 1979. If the person refuses to go to the vacant bed in the long-term care home that's available. So this is what Paul Calandra, he's an old, used to be part of the Harper government, then he ran provincially after he was defeated back in 2015. He's one of Doug Ford's attack dogs down there, Queen's Park, you know. So this is what he said in a scrum with the news reporters yesterday. Let's listen to this here.
Yes. Are there instances where hospitals will be charging? Absolutely. If somebody refuses to move into a home, if they refuse to move into their home of preferred choice, then yes, should a hospital charge them? Absolutely, because we need those spaces for patients who need acute care.
Yeah. Charge them. Absolutely. You know what comes to mind? You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. Yeah, that's what comes to mind for me. Charge him, he says. Who are we talking about here? Frail, elderly? Senior citizens? And he's like, charge them. If they refuse to go, charge them. Get them out of here. We need those beds. Get out of here, Granny. Maybe not the best spokesperson on this file, Premier Ford. What do you think? Maybe someone with a softer touch for the Minister of Long-Term Care? Oh, man. It's been the issue at the legislature this week. I hope I can get you engaged in that story this morning, get your reaction to that news. Also on the program today, our weekly look at international affairs. We call it The World with Professor Elliot Tepper. He's with Carleton University. He was my international affairs professor at Carleton University. I didn't do very well. Norman Paterson School of International Affairs. Yesterday marked 6 months since Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. It also happened to coincide with Ukraine's Independence Day. 6 months into this war, we will ask the professor where things stand. What has been the result of all of this? Energy as a weapon. Perhaps Ukraine headed to the EU someday. An expanded NATO. Worsened global food insecurity. Some say a new Cold War. That's not all that we'll talk about. Canada-China relations back in focus for us this morning. You have Liberal MP Judy Scrow, along with some other MPs and senators, planning to visit Taiwan in October. The Prime Minister seems cool to the idea. And the Chinese embassy here in Ottawa, they're not impressed at all. No shock there. Ni hao to my friends on St. Patrick Street. The embassy has issued a stern warning to Canada, saying forceful measures will be taken against any country that attempts to interfere with or infringe upon China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. All of this happening while the Trudeau government dithers away on the selection of a new ambassador to China 8 months since the departure of Dominic Barton. 8 months. And nobody seems to have the foggiest idea when Team Trudeau will get around to appointing a new ambassador. So we'll talk about that. And it is the 5th anniversary of the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar. It started 5 years ago today. Almost 750,000 people turned into refugees living in squalor in Bangladesh. The professor is an expert in the history and politics of Burma. So that's right after the 11:30 news. In between all of that, there is you and the Talk Back Hour. Your chance to weigh in on these weighty matters. We do the Talk Back Hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. It's a chance for you to comment on some of the big news stories of the day. 750-1310, 750-1310. That's our call-in line. And today, I want to get back into what I think is going to turn out to be one of the biggest stories of the year, and that's the inflation rate. It's cooled a little bit. It's only 7.6% now. Gosh, if we had seen that number 2 years ago, we'd be picking up our jaws off the floor. 7.6%, and people are cheering, oh, it's cooled off, it's cooled off. It's still near a 40-year high. But look, here's what I want to ask you. It's been more than 2 months since the Trudeau government announced a $7 billion plan that it said would help you with the rising cost of living. It said it had a plan to ease your financial burden because of high gas prices, high food prices, higher interest rates. I want to know, have you benefited from the benefits? Have you seen any of this? Has the federal government helped you with the rising cost of living? Yes or no? 750-1310. And I do want to get your take on this story that's out of Queen's Park. I really want to know what you think about this. The Ford government, as I mentioned, says hospital patients who refuse to accept an available bed in a long-term care home could be billed by the hospital as much as $1,800 a day. Do you agree or disagree with that policy? 750-1310. After the 10 o'clock news, that's our Talk Back Hour topics for this morning on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
If you don't want to die young, you're gonna have to get old. Don't keep that home fire burning, gonna wake up cold. Be thankful for the sunrise for each and every day, 'cause it only takes one lightning strike, take it all away. It's only walking through the fire they learn just who we are. If you talk while your mind is racing, you can't say what's really true. If you love while your heart is racing, it gets hard to follow through. You get caught stealing daylight, you're gonna have to do the time. 'Cause pennies don't fall from heaven, and a nickel ain't worth a dime. You can't blame the water, you can't blame the drink. You can always blame the devil, he gets blamed for a lot of things. But darling, I can tell you that blaming won't get you far. It's only walking through the fire they learn just who we are. Can be angry as lightning, bitter as the wind, can rattle your sword like a storm coming in. Can be cold as a rock, mean as a snake, hard as a bullet, never own your mistake. Put your money on the same old pony, he ain't paid out yet. Seems he always comes up lame, you always lose your bet. You can't get to paradise trading on magic beans, 'cause reaching for the sky is harder than it seems. You can't blame the water, you can't blame the drink. You can always blame the devil, he gets blamed for a lot of things. But darling, I can tell you that blaming won't get you far. It's only walking through the fire that you learn just who you are.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
9:22. Maybe connecting with our news reporter in Lower Town this morning is Chris Kurys of City News. He has been staking out the area around the St. Bridget's Church. We have Chris on the line. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Rob.
Yeah, good to hear from you, Chris. Thanks for taking a few minutes for us. Where are you right now?
I'm just outside St. Bridget's Church, right here in Lower Town.
Okay, what do you see there?
Really not much happening, more media than anything. Few people were out last night. At the end of the day, the eviction notice was given last Wednesday, and they had 5 days to vacate the premises, and that ended at 12:01 this morning. So there was a group of residents out here just curious to see what's going to happen, if the bailiff's going to come and lock the doors. Nothing of that sort yet. So it seems like it's just a bit of a waiting game. One thing I do find interesting is that pretty much any time a community member is coming by, maybe just walking down to work, there's a quick ask of, did it happen yet?
Yeah.
And the quick response of, nope, not yet. All right.
Not yet.
Maybe later.
Okay.
That's really been the vibe. Everybody's just been very curious about what's happening.
Okay. What kind of police presence, law enforcement do you see around there?
As of right now, nothing out here. It's just a few of the Tupac group members outside. There were a few Ottawa police on scene last night. There was some incidents happened. One of the residents reported that there was some assaults happening. There was a bit of a mob mentality, some water guns being sprayed at some residents who lived in the building next door. So police were called, about 5 or 6 of them on scene, and there were a lot of cruisers out here last night, but they are clear of the situation of the scene now.
Okay. You managed to speak to a resident who lives nearby the St. Bridget's Church, a person by the name of Heather, who told us this story about a tourist family who happened upon the scene.
Even last night, there was a family walking by my front door, and they were to a destination to a local restaurant, and they stopped in their tracks with 5 cop cars sitting on the block, and they didn't even know what to do. They're not from here. They didn't know if it was safe for them to go by. They didn't know what kind of, situation was happening. It's a really complex neighborhood that we live in. And, you know, no matter whether the police are there to help or not, it doesn't bring a sense of safety to community to have 5 cop cars sitting out camped in the same place for hours on end. And it's not good for anybody.
So again, that's Heather Cole, a Lowertown resident who lives near St. Bridget's Church, who says residents just want this eviction to happen.
It's a roller coaster. We got our hopes up, we got our hopes smashed, we got our hopes up again, we got our hopes smashed. It's like we want to believe that what we understand to be a lawful eviction, what we understand in reported by everyone except for the church group, we want to see it happen.
Want to see it happen. But again, the big question is, has it happened? And the answer to that, again, Chris Kurys, is?
It is no. And I reached out to the bailiff who's been dealing with this situation, said he couldn't comment, just trying to see if we might have a better idea of when they may pass by. I mean, they only opened at 9 o'clock today, so I guess for them to have come early this morning, it may have been a bit unrealistic, but still at this point, they can come at any time. So it's pretty much just a waiting game.
All right. Have you had the opportunity to speak with any members of this group?
No.
No? They won't speak to you, or?
Well, it's nothing of what we haven't heard yet, that the eviction is unlawful and that they're going to be staying here.
Okay. Thank you, Chris Kurys. Please just give us a call if something happens, if something develops. We'll put you right on the air, of course. Thank you again.
Problem.
Yep, Chris
Thanks,
Kurys is just outside St. Bridget's Church with City News right now, where he says there's more news media than just about anything else. So we'll wait and see what happens. Today was supposed to be, as I say, kind of moving day. So coming up right after the 9:30 news, it's Ontario Politics This Week with Lindsay Maskell and Andrew Brander. This is the Rob Snow Show, and this is City News.
I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3.
Some days I'm on fire. I don't even stop. I don't even drop. I don't even.
I think that this is the first time that I have unveiled a set of music that's all new music. I'm usually pulling from some of my older projects like Chameleon and Passing Notes and trying to feature songs from both of those, but the set you're about to hear has been all written within the last year. So I'm really excited to share that with Ottawa and share that with the world.
Sometimes it feels like we're falling when things are falling into.
What does it mean? Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And what it means being in a venue like this for a local artist. I mean, Centrepoint Theatre is premier. I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in, and this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this, and to also have access to an incredible film and audio crew. It's the dream.
I'm too small to house it, and it's not just me.
I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
For local news in Ottawa and the Valley, this is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, August 25th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and Smith Falls, 19 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. At least 2 swarmings around St. Bridget's Church last night, according to witnesses. Apparently, they involved members of the Lower Town community and those in St. Bridget's Church. Now, police and bailiffs apparently going to enforce an eviction notice, which so far has not been done, even though the order did take effect at 12:01 this morning. It doesn't look like there will be any COVID measures like masks or vaccine proof at Ottawa, Carleton, or Algonquin, despite a growing call for those measures to be brought back next month when the fall semester begins in order to fight a possible additional COVID wave. One province says it will start doling out Omicron-specific vaccines. That will start in a couple of weeks from now. The promise to residents of Quebec, despite the fact Health Canada still has not approved that shot. City News Time, 9:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Time for Ontario politics this week. Joining us, Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist, former advisor to Premier McGuinty. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Rob.
Great to hear from you, Lindsay Maskell. Andrew Brander's Vice President, Crestview Strategy, former advisor to the Ford government. Andrew Brander.
Good morning.
Good morning, Andrew Brander. My goodness, I can't remember the last time I spoke with him. It's that time of year, right? You know, look, Lindsay's gone on vacation, Andrew's gone on vacation, I was gone on vacation, so it's great to have the gang all back together.
Together.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's jump right into things because pretty hot issue here. This Bill C-7 has really kind of seized the news agenda this week at the legislature. It's called the More Beds, Better Care Act. I don't quite get what the government is aiming for here, whether it's going about it the right way. We all want more beds in healthcare. We all want better care from the healthcare system. But, is this really the way to go about it? So City News reported earlier this week that this legislation could see hospital patients, I mean, we're talking about elderly people here, awaiting a long-term care bed, transferred to what the government calls a temporary long-term care home, while they await a bed in their preferred home. We have about 2,000 people in hospital right now. They're waiting for a long-term care bed. They're on a wait list. They have likely filled out a list that says, I'm in Ottawa or I'm in this area of Toronto, and these are the long-term care homes near where I live. So this is where I would like to go. That's not the way it's going to work anymore. Under this legislation, the Ford government gives health authorities, say hospital administrators, the power to choose a long-term care home for these patients, even if it's out of their community, even if they don't want to go there. Let's say it's a home in, 50 kilometers outside of Ottawa. And it's a home that has, say, a bad reputation because of how it handled COVID. For example, well, I don't want to go to that home. I read about that home in the newspaper. I saw, I saw that on the Supper Hour News. I don't want to go to that home. If a patient says, I don't want to go to that home, I'm going to stay in the hospital, they could pay an uninsured fee. City News says $1,500. The Globe and Mail this morning says $1,800. A day. But a co-payment anyway, it's $62. Wow. And apparently the hospitals have had this authority since 1979. What do you think of this bill? Lindsay Maskell, give me your thoughts on this, please.
Well, it was pretty shocking, and full disclosure, I actually never did any time in the Ministry of Health, so it may not have been my area of expertise for my time in government, so I wasn't aware of those powers.
Yep.
I'm certainly not aware of them having ever been used. it's a pretty shocking number to hear how much it would cost for people to have that little bit of time. I think one of those things that happens is where somebody needs to be moved out of hospital into long-term care, and families maybe need just a little bit of time to get organized to be helpful. If you're sent somewhere that's far away from your family, I just think about the quality of life and quality of care, because in long-term care and in the hospital, I think we can all agree that you still need family support and advocates. And so it's all a pretty shocking measure. And it's also, when we think about the people most affected by the pandemic, it seems to be that our seniors continuously are the ones taking the hit, where they're not the only people blocking beds in our healthcare system, right? The surgical backlog causes huge drains on the emergency rooms, on hospital beds. There's other pressures. So it maybe would have been better served to think about it as a suite of measures to help alleviate the stress. But it definitely is a really a shocking announcement, particularly considering, that these are people who have supported our tax system, our healthcare system for their entire careers, and for it to not serve them when they need it most near the end of their life is a pretty wild news story, and certainly something we weren't expecting on this legislative agenda.
I have been told that the co-payment of $62 is not unusual. I've been told, and that's another daily thing, $62 a day. I'm told that's not unusual.
The co-payment,
yes,
is something that is administered in homes anyway. So this would suggest that you should be in a long-term care home, and therefore you should be paying this regardless.
Right. Yeah.
And full disclosure, I say this every time we talk about long-term care. I work with the Ontario Long-Term Care Association, so just getting that out of the way.
Sure thing.
But I do think, to Lindsay's point, it's very important to recognize the close relationship that long-term care homes have with the individual families of the residents, as she pointed out, but also the relationship they also have already with most hospitals in their community. They share resources. They often share staff. These types of transfers between hospitals and long-term care facilities or homes happen all the time, and they should. Of course, during the pandemic, the government introduced occupancy protection on new admissions to homes. We learned very early in the pandemic that the problem was people being too close to each other. Yeah. So they got rid of the 3 and the 4 bed wards, increased their infection prevention and control plans, which included, in most of these cases, these isolation beds, so that when they had a COVID case, they were no longer having to transfer those people into hospitals. So now it's sort of the reverse, right? Where instead of long-term care homes feeling the need to transfer people into hospitals, the reverse is really the government's only solution to what is for lack of a better term, a real estate problem, right? Which is these beds are just not available. So the biggest problem here, I think, and the biggest concern, because I do think there's a willingness from long-term care homes to say, hey, look, the hospitals actually stepped up for us in a big way during our crisis. And we would love to be in a place to be able to support, support them in return. The problem is, as I said, shared resources, shared staff. Yeah. If we're having staffing problems in hospitals right now, we're having those also in long-term care homes. Sure. It's the same. So unless these, so you can fill the beds, but unless they come with the additional support of the staff needed to staff those beds, then you're setting yourselves up for situations that no one wants to find themselves in.
Okay, let's listen. This is Paul Calandra. He kind of fronts for the government when the premier's not in the house, and he's the Minister of Long-Term Care. He was with reporters yesterday. Let's roll tape on that again, please. Okay.
Yes. Are there instances where hospitals will be charging? Absolutely. If somebody refuses to move into a home, if they refuse to move into their home of preferred hospital charge them? Absolutely, because we need those spaces for patients who need acute care.
Okay, I apologize for the quality of the audio, but I just wonder, I've been following Paul Calandra. He used to be a Harper-era MP, and then he was defeated and then ran in the provincial election first time around with the Doug Ford win. He's got a reputation being kind of an attack dog. I don't know if he's got the right temperament to be the long-term care minister. We're talking about senior citizens here. Talking about frail elderly people. We're talking about people who are in, let's face it, they're in the final few years of their life. They're going into long-term care homes. Okay? And listen to how he's talking about it. Yes, absolutely. Charge them. If they refuse to, we got to charge them. We got to get them out of these beds. These beds are for acute care beds. I understand the issue. Okay? I understand the issue. But my gosh, where's the compassion? Is this really the right pitch man you want on this, Lindsay? What do you think? I mean, come on.
Not only where is the compassion, but, it's not a full plan, right? We have yet to see any kind of strategic plan about this overall. So we're getting these little, one-off solutions here that doesn't really show kind of that mastery of a good plan of what we're going to be doing to deal with our healthcare system in its current state of crisis and in long-term care. But he's also not just lacking compassion, but it's a simple, political insight that, we're all going to be seniors, right? We are going to care about the care we get. We're going to care about the care our parents are going to get, how our grandparents are treated. This is just one of, life's natural points. At some point, we are all going to be dealing with aging family members, and so the lack of compassion on this, and that being the only sort of looking like a silver bullet news story of the day about the healthcare system is, charging older people and moving them places against their will, doesn't show great political insight to how people feel. And people do have some thoughts about how the healthcare system pressures could be alleviated. And that certainly wasn't the one most were thinking about, right? So that is, I think it was pretty shocking to people. It's not just lacking compassion, it's just lacking good political sense.
I don't know. I want to get back to this. If you want to try and do something, you have to convince the public that you're doing it for the right reason. And I'm not sure if this is the person who can convince the public that it's the right and proper thing to do. And it comes across to me as this this ministry. It used to be health and long-term care, and now it's its own ministry, long-term care. And he's the minister. He's also the Minister of Legislative Affairs. He's also the government House Leader. He's also the Commissioner of the Board of Internal Economy. And it's like, oh yeah, here, you can be the long-term care minister too. I don't know. It's not packaged right, Andrew.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in their defense, I'm sure the government would say they're, the first ministry to actually make a dedicated minister of long-term care.
But are they dedicated to it, or is it an afterthought?
Sure. But as a standalone ministry, and there is obviously a back end in terms of the public service that supports that. And I'll say in the dealings I've had with the officials, the deputy at long-term care, they're all exceptionally apprised of the issues in long-term care. I tend to agree. I think I think some of the emotion seem to be sort of wearing on the minister, to put it lightly. But I do think, it is important to recognize, there was a point during this pandemic where the cabinet was, beginning to contemplate a framework for picking and choosing who was going to get care and who wasn't. So, now that I do think that there's a point now, because of the backlog that has been created, where some of this messaging will probably resonate with some people who have been waiting exceptionally long for surgical procedures. And they're saying, we're past the point of picking who gets care, but now we're picking, which bed we want to, stay in. And like, don't get me wrong, I think our system should certainly accommodate for that. But my overall comment in this also, as we're talking about the long-term care minister, is, this is a measure that the hospitals have been asking for more than anyone else. So to be honest, I'm not really sure why Minister Calandra is the one sort of out front defending this. This is about creating the space in the hospitals, and therefore I think it would be more incumbent upon the hospitals to explain, the reasonings behind why they need these beds so desperately. You wait until it's on the 6 o'clock news in Toronto or the 6 o'clock news in Ottawa, when somebody's frail elderly grandmother is sitting there with an $1,800 bill. You wait to the public reaction for that. Mm-hmm. I hope the government is anticipating the blowback that it is going to get when that hits the news. When somebody gets they're standing there, sitting there on the 6 o'clock news with a $10,000 bill or something. It's going to be outrageous. Okay, look, a little bit more when we come back. Doug Ford on tour, went to Atlantic Canada, met with some of the premiers, and said the status quo is not working when it comes to health care. This is the Rob Snow Show. It's Ontario Politics This Week, and this is City News.
The Centre of Excellence in Frailty-Informed Care at Pearly Health conducts applied research that focuses on the development of best practices. And really, the goal of the Centre of Excellence is to optimize care and quality of life for older adults living with frailty.
Well, yeah, and that comes to the latest research when it comes to adults living with frailty, older adults, as you said. What is some of the latest research that you've seen?
Yeah, so we're really proud of a recent study that's coming out of the Centre of Excellence focusing on our CME Understanding Frailty Together program. So CME is an approach to caring for older adults living with frailty, and it really focuses on the assessment and management of frailty in long-term care. So what's really unique about the program is that it was developed in long-term care and it's designed for long-term care. It really focuses on early and transparent communication with families and with residents so that they really have a good understanding of the health status of their loved one and then can make decisions about their care and their future goals of care in that context of frailty, understanding what those risks are of a particular intervention or course of treatment.
Danielle, when we say frailty, what exactly do we mean by that?
Yeah, so frailty is a medical condition. It leads to a decline in function and health. And people that are more severely frail are more susceptible to large declines in their health. So if they do suffer from a minor illness, they're less able to cope with that illness, and they're more subject to rapid declines in their overall health.
When it comes to sort of interventions, I guess there's some are more invasive, some are less invasive. I know you're obviously, looking at the less invasive, but what exactly do we mean by that? Like, can you give us an idea of some of those invasive interventions that we've seen in the past?
Yeah, so the CME program revolves around, again, assessing the risks of particular interventions. So someone who is frail, let's say, and has a fall, one of the courses of treatment could be going to the hospital. But someone who's very frail needs to understand, and their families need to understand, what the implications of going to the hospital could be for someone who has that level of frailty. So the CME program helps them understand those risks and take into account really their values and their preferences and their goals of care to help them make the best decision for them.
Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
10 minutes before 10, it's Ontario politics this week. Lindsay Maskell, our good Liberal friend, Andrew Brander, more on the right side of things. I am Rob Snow. We're talking about healthcare for the most part this morning. Premier Ford headed east. He was going one way, I was going the other. He said this week, when it comes to healthcare, the status quo is not working. The quote is, doing the same thing over and over again, throwing billions and billions of dollars at a solution. It's just not working, he said. Also reiterated his plea for more funding from the federal government. He seemed to indicate that his government's going to look to clear surgical backlogs by having OHIP pay for operations in private facilities. That seems to, by the way, get a warm reception from some of the premiers in Atlantic Canada, like Tim Houston, who ran on healthcare, fixing healthcare, Premier of Nova Scotia, Blaine Higgs, Progressive Conservative Premier of New Brunswick, as well, open to the idea. But here in Ontario, Andrew Brander, how does Ford sell this to the public as a solution to the healthcare crisis?
Exactly what he's doing. Look, these healthcare problems, these HHR crises are not unique to Ontario or Canada, quite frankly. But we're going to get hit harder than other countries. Our older senior population is the fastest growing demographic. It is going to triple over the next 25 years, and solutions to these problems are long-term. It takes 4 years to grow a nurse, 10 years to grow a GP. I think what the Premier did this week was exceptionally smart. In going out east, appearing with Premiers Houston, Higgs, and King to deliver this message of, the status quo not working, a message delivered to Ontario, but by making it out east, it allowed him to show and demonstrate that consensus, make it a broader problem, and make this a national problem that really, truly needs pan-Canadian solutions. And so by him going out east and starting to till the soil on what will be a difficult conversation, it allowed him to get on the record with fewer distractions than he would probably typically face if he had made this announcement in front of the QP press gallery. But also allows Ford to position himself as a leader in the Council of the Federation. Of course, with Oregon stepping away from that position, typically it's BC or Quebec, maybe even Alberta, that tends to stick out their neck on these provincial transfer matters. It's really nice to see Ontario showing some leadership ahead of what will be difficult health transfer negotiations starting as early as the fall.
His people also put out, just quickly on that, Andrew, his people also put out pictures of him with Dominic LeBlanc, Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, together, the two of them together in New Brunswick. I believe he's from New Brunswick. That kind of shows, look, I'm calling on the federal government for more federal funding, but it kind of indicates, I'm open to cooperation, I'm open to talking. We're not enemies. We're trying to find solutions together. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just the federal government's problem to solve, but the other solutions that are available to the province come with a tough sell, right? Okay. And that's why making this announcement out there is much easier. You'll notice, when it comes to these types of discussions, the fact that he left Minister Calandra and Sylvia here to make the announcement here in Ontario on Thursday probably indicates that he knows it's a tough sell.
Okay. In your assessment, Lindsay Maskell, how does Doug Ford sell private clinics that where you use your OHIP card? How does he sell that to the people of Ontario?
Well, he definitely did a smart move of going to a different province to talk about it. Okay. The interesting thing is, though, that his counterparts dealt with their own healthcare systems differently during the pandemic, particularly with the way that they protected their healthcare workers, the way that they remunerated them in pay, particularly nurses. Yes, everybody is facing the crunch and facing the still COVID illness and fatigue and exhaustion post-pandemic. But the healthcare systems that worked quite differently and healthcare professionals that were awarded differently during the pandemic. Now, they also have this. I get that people would like to see anything happen to alleviate the backlog. And I think the issue is without a plan, Ontarians are going to get very nervous about the slippery slope of, well, we'll pay for go private for this, pay for this. That it becomes a slippery slope with this government. It went from, I always use the example of the Minister zoning orders, right? To have one used in 12 years, to have 40 used in a matter of weeks. So I think the concern is that without a plan, without kind of a promise of very unclear messaging, particularly from the Minister of Health in the first early days as they started to float more private measures, that the public is rightfully concerned. And so, obviously he did need to look like he had counterparts agreeing to this plan. And it's always played well for Doug Ford and for the Trudeau government when they get along, right? That made sense, especially when you think about the good press they got with the relationship between Premier Ford and Minister Freeland. People like that. People want that kind of cooperation. Yeah. So they need to show that this is a plan that has isn't being driven by Doug Ford. They need to see this as a national plan, and he wants to make it seem like a national plan. Gotcha. So that people might have
he has allies. He has allies.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right. Our time is tight. We only have a little more than a minute left. So 55,000 education workers are represented by QB. They're not teachers. They're like everybody else who works in the school system. They want 11.5% a year, 11.7% a year, and they want 3 years. Government counters with 2% or less over 4 years. Union calls for a strike vote. First day of school for most students less than 2 weeks away. What do you think is most likely to happen here? Full-blown strike, some kind of work-to-rule rotating strike, or do they get a deal done? What do you think, Andrew? What's going to happen? What's most likely to happen?
I think there's a little bit of self-awareness on the side of or underestimating the frustration that parents have faced over the last 2 years. I don't think there's any appetite for any kind of job action, and if that happens, I really don't see public sentiment resting with the union on this one.
Okay, Lindsay, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, it's a hard sell. People want to return to normal, but here in Toronto with the Toronto District School Board, those people that are doing that work in our schools, average is well under $40,000 a year salary. That doesn't pay rent.
Can't get by on that in Toronto.
You can't get by on that in Toronto. It's some of the lowest paying work in Toronto. So considering that we are that we have obviously been going through such an economic challenge, but I do think that these people are essential to schools, and hopefully people will think about what they deserve as well as what they need.
See what happens.
Their kids coming back.
Week and a half to go until school. Okay, enjoy what's left of summer, folks.
Have a great week.
Okay, speak soon. Bye-bye. Andrew Brander,
Bye-bye.
Lindsay Maskell. That's Ontario Politics this week. The news next, and then the Talkback Hour on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, August 25th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 19 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. An eviction order for those at St. Bridget's Church in Lowertown went into effect at 12:01 this morning, but so far that has not been acted on. There were confrontations, though, between the United People of Canada in the church and local residents last night. Heather lives in Lowertown.
100% terrifying mob mentality. And it's really, really scary to see it happening. And from my perspective, the situation is just escalating, and I'm really worried about what could happen.
Now, Heather says people in that area were swarmed on at least 2 occasions last night. City News time 10:01. Now your forecast. Here's meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll have sun and cloud for the most part today. Just a slight chance of showers. The high about 26 degrees. Not quite as muggy as it was yesterday. Showers more likely through the late evening, especially overnight though. 15 for the low. Today's high near 26.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 19 degrees. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg arrived in our country today. First item on the agenda, a tour with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of a military radar site that's in Nunavut. Senior Canadian and NATO officials say the visit is meant to highlight the region as a security priority in light of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and issues related to climate change. Rapidly accelerating melting in the Arctic means that area is more accessible to both allies and enemies. City News time 10:02 as Canadians await government approval on the Omicron-specific COVID-19 booster shot. One province is offering a timeline to roll that out. Our Jamie Pulfer joins us with what's being done to prevent a potential fall wave of infections as people return to work and school and more activities move indoors.
Many people have been on the fence about it. Do you get another COVID booster now? The one that's currently available in this country targets the original strain of the virus that has continued to mutate. Or do you wait for the new Omicron-specific vaccine? It still has to be approved by Health Canada, but in Quebec, they're now talking about the rollout.
It is expected to be here in Quebec by the beginning of not next week, but the week after, so just after the Labor Day.
The province's health director, Dr. Luc Boileau, says the shot targets the original strain and Omicron. He's also suggesting Health Canada should give the green light in about a week. He's the first health official in this country to offer up any sort of timeline. So far, there's been no heads up from the Ontario government. Moderna says the federal government purchased 4.5 million new doses of the Omicron vaccine for a total of 12 million doses. Jamie Pulfer, City News.
Canadian researchers are alarmed by a spike in the number of cannabis poisoning among children. City News reporter Eva Fragiscatos with more on some new findings.
The Ontario-based researchers found that 3 provinces, Alberta, BC, and Ontario, saw twice the increase in pediatric hospitalizations than Quebec, which did not allow edibles at the time of the study. The research published in the New England Journal of Medicine found cases among children younger than 10 rose 6-fold between 2015 and 2021. There was a notable spike after THC-infused gummies, chocolates, and baked goods were approved for sale in 2020. A senior author of the study and a staff physician at Sick Kids says when young children ingest edibles, they become very, very sick, and they've seen kids with seizures and kids who have stopped breathing. The researchers are calling for restrictions on edibles. Eva Fragiscatos, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Two stories in the mix that I would really like to kick around with you this morning. One is inflation. The other is about healthcare here in the province of Ontario. So on inflation, okay, it's been more than 2 months since the Trudeau government announced it had a $7 billion plan to help ease the financial burden caused by inflation and the rising cost of living. How, if at all, has the Trudeau government helped you deal with the rising cost of living? It was a $7 billion plan announced 2 months ago, better than 2 months ago. Have you benefited from it at all? That's story number one. Okay, 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. It's the federal government helped you with inflation. The other one, we just talked a lot about it here. The Ford government has this Bill 7. I'd really like to get your reaction to this. Hospital patients who refuse to accept an available bed in a long-term care home could be billed by the hospital. It could be a $62 copayment, which I'm told happens quite often, actually. But it could also be a so-called uninsured fee, and that could be as much as $1,800 a day. A day, according to a report in the Globe and Mail. Do you agree or disagree with that policy? The government says it's about clearing up space in the hospital. So thousands of people are in the hospital. They should be in long-term care. If there's a bed available, even if it's not in your community, you'll have to take it. And if you refuse, this is the kind of bill you could be facing, $1,800 a day. A day. What do you think? Agree or disagree? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Talkback hour on the Rob Snow Show. You know, not a day on the inflation stuff. I mean, not a day goes by there's without a story about inflation. I mean, every day it's in the news. Inflation, 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 rising cost of living crisis. There's a big meeting in the United States this week with officials from the U.S. Federal Reserve. They call it the Jackson Hole get-together. And the financial news media is going to be all over that. They'll be listening for clues about what direction interest rates are headed. I suspect they're going to go up. Boy, if you read the news out of the UK, David, it's going to be brutal in the UK this winter.
Oh, it's not looking good.
Citibank predicted this week that inflation in the UK is going to hit 18% next year. 18%.
I thought we had it
Can you
bad.
imagine?
Yeah.
It's like the 70s all over again. And that's all about energy prices. CNN is reporting this morning the British government will have to spend more money helping people in Britain pay their heating bills than they spend on pandemic relief. Like $100 billion, 100 billion British pounds. And here in this country, the federal finance minister has been hard to find, and when she's been found, she doesn't have anything to say about the rising cost of living and hasn't said anything in months about it. Anything compelling, anyway. And then you have this long-term care story. Because we have thousands of patients in hospitals, they should really be in long-term care homes. This story exploded as an issue this week at Queen's Park. I have to say before this week, I didn't really know much about it. I don't claim to be any kind of expert on it. We did an interview about it yesterday. We're going to follow up again today. CityNews among the first to report this. Our colleague Cynthia Mulligan in Toronto, right on top of this story from the very beginning. But you can imagine this scenario. You're in the hospital. You should really be in long-term care. You're on a wait list. You'd like to be in a long-term care home, if possible, in Ottawa, but you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, and in the meantime, you're in the hospital in Ottawa. So say along comes a hospital administrator, and the hospital administrator says, we have a room in Renfrew, just as an example. You have to take it. And if you don't take it, we're going to bill you $1,800 a day. That's Bill 7. So I'd like to know what you think about that. Bill 7. Dave in the West End. Thank you for calling, Dave. You're on City News.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Dave.
Rob, I see this $1,800 thing creating a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
Let me explain.
Sure
I'm
thing.
89 years old.
Yep.
The wife has dementia.
Yep.
She's on 5 waiting lists now.
For long-term care.
For long-term care. Okay?
Okay.
Now, if something happens to me,
Yep.
she goes to the hospital.
Right.
Right? Or
Yeah.
if something happens to her, that she needs hospitalization, right?
Okay.
So the wait, are they going to bump the people on the waiting list that we're on now to look after the people, the 2,000 people in the hospital?
I don't know.
You see what I'm saying?
I kind of see what you're saying, yeah.
You see what I'm getting at, Rob, is that if they're trying to clear the hospital...
They're trying to get
then
people out of the
that'll take
hospital into
preference
long-term care.
over the waiting list that we're on.
Okay.
Which means we'll never get in other than sending her to the hospital.
Right, like you're on a wait list. You're on a wait list, but what if you're supposed to be ahead of somebody who's in the hospital?
Yes.
Let's say, right?
Well,
But their
I
goal,
imagine.
but just as an example, but their political goal is to get people out of the hospital because right now they have a crisis in the hospital. Right? Are people going to be jumping the queue in the long-term care system, in other words?
Exactly.
That's your
Are
worry.
people in the hospital going to be...
Gotcha.
Through...
Are they going to get preferential treatment, right?
Well, no, it's not sort of preferential treatment.
Okay.
It's the government and the hospitals
coercing people.
forcing the other end of the healthcare system to look after them first.
Yeah. Now, let's say something does happen and your wife ends up in the hospital. Okay?
Right.
Okay. And she, as you say, she's on a wait list, and she would prefer to be in Ottawa, I suspect, in a long-term care home in Ottawa, so you wouldn't have to travel, whatever, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So under this Bill 7, if I'm just using this as Smiths Falls, there's a room in Smiths Falls, Dave. The government the hospital would have the authority to say, Mrs. Dave, you have to go to Smiths Falls. And if you don't go to Smiths Falls, it's $1,800 a day. Dave is going to have to pay $1,800 a day. What do you think of that?
Well, you see, how do they... I'm not on the hospital's waiting list, so the hospital aren't going to call me.
Mm.
You see what I'm trying to say?
I see what you mean.
Is that if
is it all coordinated, in other words? Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
yeah. All right, Dave.
The hospital in Smith Falls or the care in Smith Falls, are they going to be forced to take a hospital patient? Because I'm not on their list anyway.
Yeah, gotcha, Dave. Gotcha. The lines are jammed, Dave. That's one aspect. That's a very good, interesting issue that you raised. Thank you. Thank you. Moving along, Armand, Ottawa. Armand.
Morning.
Hi. What do you think of Bill 7?
I agree with it. It's
you agree with it?
Because I agree 100%. Look,
Really?
I'm a senior too.
Yeah.
If I end up in the hospital and I would like to go to a home, wherever it is, well, I'll go somewhere while I wait for my home to open up, because I really don't want to have a bed tied up in hospital for somebody that really, really needs it.
Right.
So I think that's the money part. That's another issue. But as far as I'm concerned, wherever it opens up, go, because they're telling you you can go while you wait for X home, wherever it is. Which makes more sense.
Yeah,
than
I
being
mean,
in
the way they're explaining it is, I'm using this example. Let's say there's a room in Smiths Falls. Okay, you're in the Civic. They say there's a room in Smiths Falls. You'd rather be in Ottawa, but we have one in Smiths Falls. You're saying you would take it.
Oh, yeah,
right?
definitely.
They're saying, and if one comes open in Ottawa, you can get the room in Ottawa from Smiths Falls.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Is it? Are they not? They're coercing you, are they not? They're coercing you. $1,800. If they say it's going to be $1,800 a day, if you don't take that bed in Smiths Falls, we're going to send you a bill, Armand, for $1,800 a day.
My mom, a long time, quite a number of years ago, in St. Catharines, there was nothing available. She was in the hospital there, and they offered home in Niagara Falls. and they said, "Do you want it?" My mom says, "I want out of the hospital. Send me wherever the heck you want."
Really?
So she went.
She went. Okay.
No problems. Yeah, because they don't want to be in hospital.
Gotcha, Dave. Armand, thank you. Thank you, Armand. Thank you. Okay, 750-1310. Be right back. Couple of lines available. Inflation. I want to get a little bit more into this inflation. And Bill 7, hospitals and long-term care, the latest solution on offer from the Ford government. Your thoughts, please. The Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour here on City News.
Riding requires attention and focus. No distractions, no moment of unawareness, because one brief moment can cost a lifetime of other moments. Everyone deserves to arrive home.
The Maritime provinces are home to some of the oldest settlements in Canadian history. But did you know that one of the first was actually started by black settlers? Take a minute to learn about the rise and untimely fall of Africville. Black people have lived in Nova Scotia since before the founding of Halifax in 1749, but it wasn't until after the American Revolution in the late 1700s and early 1800s that large groups of black settlers began to arrive in the province, many of whom were former slaves promised freedom and land in Nova Scotia. What they encountered when they arrived, however, was racist treatment by their white neighbors and government officials. This pushed many black people to build homes on the outskirts of town instead. But despite the area receiving little support from government officials and lacking necessities like functioning sewage systems, access to clean water, and proper garbage disposals, the tight-knit community persevered, and so Africville was born. For more than 150 years, the small community grew, expanding from just a few homes to a population of over 400 people. Everything changed, however, in 1964 when plans for a new bridge and the idea of urban renewal prompted the municipality to set its sights on Africville's land. Instead of investing in the community, officials approved a relocation program that promised free job training and employment assistance to help residents through relocation. But the reality wasn't so kind. Residents had their belongings moved in city dump trucks and homes were demolished immediately after their owners left. Of the 400-plus people living in Africville, only 14 residents held clear legal titles to their land, so the rest were only given $500 with the promise of more social aid in the future. Not much else was actually done to support Africville and its residents until 2001, when a United Nations report called for reparations to be paid to the community. In 2010, Halifax Mayor Peter Kelly apologized for the atrocities against Africville as part of a $4.5 million compensation deal. In 2021, Councillor Lindell Smith put forward a 7-part motion to plan for the future of Africville alongside local organizations and the descendants of former residents. Today, there's a public park and museum where Africville once stood to teach visitors about the history of the land and its community. If you've never heard of Africville, you're not alone. The tragic story of this small black community in Nova Scotia is not as well known as it should be.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Yes, it does. Ford government says hospital patients who refuse to accept an available bed in a long-term care home could be billed by the hospital. It could be a $62 copayment. I'm told this already happens from time to time, but it could also be a so-called uninsured fee. That could amount to about $1,800 a day. Do you agree or disagree with that policy? Some more information by way of City News' Cynthia Mulligan out of Queen's Park, who tweets, breaking news. Sources tell me what travel guidelines are for new government regulations detailing how far a senior in hospital can be sent to a long-term care home chosen for them, meaning chosen for them by the government. Up to 300 kilometers away from their community in the north, 300 kilometers away, 100 kilometers elsewhere, 30K in a city. Interim Liberal leader John Fraser about to hold news conference, suspect same sources and is revealing same info. Ford government tells me travel guidelines have not been decided yet. They are still consulting. No decision has been made. They are trying to determine what the impact of the decisions will be. North might not even be included in travel. Initial numbers are a starting point to assess the impact. Okay. So some new information there. And again, we're awaiting a news conference. It started? He has started? Okay. Let's just hold on, folks. This is a local MPP. He is also the interim leader of the Liberal Party. So let's listen here. John Fraser.
No, on the phone. You do have a question on the phone.
Okay.
Please start today. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Alan. Good morning. Sorry to make you wait so long.
That's okay. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about what you feel. What do you think the PCs are trying to avoid by not having committee meetings? Is it just like a parade of healthcare experts telling them that this is a bad idea, or what do you think they are trying to avoid here?
I think they're trying to avoid public scrutiny, and people coming and asking the 4 questions we've asked this morning and more. We're talking. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to get it done fast, and then they want to make up the rules, and it's harder for us to see those rules. And what's even harder for us to see, and this is kind of the cruel part, is this stuff's going to happen. And it's going to happen to an individual family, a couple hundred people at first in this province. We're not going to see that. We're not going to know that here. Once it starts to happen, it's spread out and diverse, and it's going to be happening to 250 families or 1,500 families in the next year and a half. That's a very small part of Ontario and very hard for us to see. And so the government just wants to get out as quickly as they can, and that's wrong. And if they were serious about it and wanted to do the right, humane thing, give families answers, let people come and talk about it, and then they'll realize that they need to withdraw the bill as it stands.
All right, that's John Fraser. He's the interim Liberal leader, Ottawa South MPP, asking the government to drop this bill. He told me yesterday when he was on the show he doesn't think they're going to do that. He thinks they're going to pass it by Labor Day, which is, when's Labor Day? Monday, right? Okay. John in Kentville. John, good morning. You're on City News. Thank you for waiting, sir.
Hey, no problem. I find that this is just another symptom or a result of a move that's been happening for many, many years, not just in Canada, but also in the States. And I would say you can go back to Reagan, you can go back to Mike Harris, you can look at a lot of these ideologues that really don't believe that socialized medicine is really the answer. I think we have to remember that this is called an insurance plan. This is the Ontario Hospital Insurance Plan, right?
Yeah,
it's not free health care. It's not.
No, it's certainly not free.
For all health care.
No, it's not free at all. No. The average, if you want to say, the average premium for a family in Canada now is about $16,000 a year, John.
Yeah, and I've seen different numbers on that, but that sounds about right. So we're paying through our taxes, we're paying through discrete premiums, we're paying through co-payments, we're paying for many care items that are not available through OHEP, such as vision care, dental. So this is not a health provision program. It's a health insurance program, and there are massive
I don't know why you would say it's all the right-wing ideologues' fault. Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne governed the province of Ontario for 15 years before Premier Ford came along.
Well, you know what? I can't disagree with that, Rob.
They froze.
What I think.
Hold on, John. Let me finish. Let me finish and talk about the record. They froze hospital budgets at a time when healthcare costs were going up 7% a year, which is like cutting healthcare by 7% a year. They laid off thousands of nurses. They cut the pay of our doctors. They cut spaces in medical school.
But why was that? Why was that? It's supply and demand. You can only supply what you can pay for. So you have two choices. Either you increase your revenue or you reduce your services.
Yeah.
So which is it?
Well, John,
do people want to pay more taxes and more premiums, or do they want to realize that they're not going to get
with Dalton McGuinty, who said he would not raise taxes when he was first elected? What did he? He created 2 brand new taxes. Both are designed to pay for health care. You pay, as an employee, you pay a special health care tax every year. And your employer pays a health care tax every year.
So politically, I'm not on either fence. What I am is a centrist, former progressive conservative. To me, this is a political conversation.
Right.
But when I look at this Bill 7, I think it's wrong-headed.
I think it's wrong, too. I think it's wrong, too. I don't think that seniors should be coerced saying, if you don't leave this hospital now, you're going to pay $1,800 a day. I think that's
an
terrible.
Excellent point. What I'd like to know, too, and maybe you can find out, what's that $1,800 a day based on? That's $630,000 a year. What's it paying
$1,800 a day is probably what it costs to stay in a hospital.
Okay, so now you're going to make people compensate you dollar for dollar for all of the overhead and all of the expensive procedures that take place in the hospital?
I guess what the government's thinking is, I'm trying to get into their brain. It's kind of difficult. Maybe they're hoping just the threat of it will make people take the available bed. Right?
You've hit the key word.
Okay.
It's a threat.
All right.
It's punitive. It's wrong-headed. And it is completely anti-democratic in my mind.
All right.
I'd love you to find out where that $1,800 is coming from.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Yeah. Okay. Albert, Ottawa. You're on City News on Bill 7. Albert.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
I'm just reading a headline here in the Toronto Star that's a little bit different than what you're saying, and I'm wondering if the Star got it wrong. It says here, elderly hospital patients who are cleared for discharge but refuse to move into a nursing home they've already chosen may soon face a daily $62 co-payment, Long-Term Care Minister Paul Carleton says. Now, that sounds a little bit crazy to me, because if you've already chosen the long-term care home, why would you want to stay in a hospital? But that's the way it's written up in the Star. And they're saying the full daily fee, which is the same as what's charged for a bed in long-term care, would go to the hospital to cover the cost of food and the operating the bed.
That's how the Star is reporting. This is how the Globe and Mail reports it. Quote, Ontario...
Well, I don't trust a lot of the stuff the Star says anyway.
Well,
it was funny you're talking about this, and I was reading this clip on the Toronto Star, but I'm going to tell you something very personal. My parents went through this when they passed away. My mother suffered a stroke. She had to stay in a hospital until a bed was open, and she couldn't get her first choice. She ended up in a hellhole here in Ottawa on Carleton Avenue. She had to wait in that place for over a year before her bed, her first choice was given to her. But then my father, unfortunately, was passing away in the hospital because of his chemo, and I was surprised because they called me in and they said, if your dad doesn't go on chemo, he's going to pass away. Not only that, we're going to have to discharge him. And what had happened is I went to see my mother that night. I walked past the CEO of the long-term care where my mother was, and they asked me, "How's your dad doing?" I said, "Unfortunately, he's probably got about three more weeks to live, and they want to put him in the first long-term care home that's opened." Right. And what had happened was the next day I got a call from the hospital. The hospital said to me, Mr. So-and-so, myself, talking to me, they said, "We have some news for you. We're going to release your father on compassionate grounds with your mother." And my dad did pass away 3 weeks ago. But for me being in my position right now, that I may need a hospital bed open for another procedure for cancer or something, it's a tough call for me, but I tell you, it can make misery for people that have to wait and are put in this, and they're put away from their families. Understood. Because a lot of these people could be on their final months, and they really should be as close to their family as possible.
Okay, thank you, Albert. Okay, back right after the news. It looks like the question period in the legislature is about to begin. And this is a hot issue. Our Queen's Park correspondent, City News, Richard Southern, now reporting that they have called for time allocation on this bill, meaning that it won't be sent to committee. Usually you would have first reading, second reading, then it would go to committee. You would hear from experts. Maybe the bill would be amended, and then it would get third reading royal assent. That's not going to happen by the sounds of things. So be right back with more analysis of this. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Today is a very exciting day. We are officially opening the Interzip Rogers for the summer season of this year. Last year we were expecting to have maybe 20,000 people, and we actually had over 30,000 riders for the first year. So we're really excited to reopen this year.
That was epic and scary!
You have a really different perspective view-wise of the area we're in. So you have a clear view of the Parliament. Obviously, you're crossing the river, and of course, you're moving from a province to another, which is unique of this zip line. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. Rogers has been partners even before Interzip opened, actually. They were all in the first meeting we had with Rogers, and that for us was really a nice commitment. We're really fortunate to have Rogers with us, and on top of having Rogers, it's basically the name of the zipline, which is the Interzip Rogers, that is now pretty much renowned across the country.
Rogers Interzip is a great activity for people who live in or visit the National Capital Region. Get out and have an opportunity to zip across the Ottawa River between Ottawa and Outaouais.
And the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, August 25th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa, it is mostly cloudy and 21. In Smiths Falls, it is 22. And here's what's making news this hour. Play is underway at the CP Women's Open at the Hunt Club. The best in women's golf teeing off, and that started at 7 in the first round of a 4-round event. One of the favorites to win, Smiths Falls native Brooke Henderson, tees off just after 1 in the afternoon. And witnesses tell City News there were at least 2 swarmings around St. Bridget's Church last night, apparently involving members of the Lower Town community and those in St. Bridget's Church. An eviction notice was served on the residents of the church last week, and it took effect just after midnight. At the moment, City News reporter Kurys tells us there is no police or bailiff presence in the area, gearing up to kickstart the eviction process. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is hosting a second high-profile international visitor this week. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is coming to Canada today, and the pair will first tour a military radar site in Nunavut. Senior Canadian officials say the visit is meant to highlight the region as a security priority in light of the war in Ukraine and climate change. Now, earlier in the week, Trudeau was in Toronto and Newfoundland with Germany's Chancellor to sign a green energy deal that aims to start a transatlantic hydrogen supply chain by 2025. City News time is 10:33. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
10:34. And it's a red hot one. We have a hot Ontario political issue that is happening now. It's Bill C7. Making its way apparently now on an expedited basis through the Ontario legislature. It's about hospitals and long-term care, patients in hospitals who should really be in long-term care homes. It has exploded as the story out of Queen's Park this week. Like I say, before this week, I didn't really know too much about this issue. I knew they had this term long ago. Used to call them bed blockers. I never liked that term. You call somebody a bed blocker. If they're in a hospital, there's no place else for them to go. Why would you call them a bed blocker? But anyway, that term was thrown about. And it's kind of back again. Big account in the Globe and Mail this morning. Dustin Gray, Dustin Cook. Bylines, Queen's Park Bureau, Globe and Mail. Headline, Ontario's long-term care minister backs fees for elderly patients who refuse to leave hospital. I'd like to get your reaction to this. Quote, Ontario long-term care minister Paul Calandra says hospitals should be encouraged to use their existing powers to charge elderly patients up to $1,800 a day for refusing to leave an available long-term care bed, as his government pushes forward with legislation aimed at moving more people out of crowded hospital wards. It is the government's proposed More Beds, Better Care Act, introduced last Friday. It is silent on these fees, but it would allow hospitals to temporarily enroll a patient who no longer needs hospital care in a long-term care home, who no longer needs hospital care in a long-term care home, not of their choosing, without their consent. Okay? A long-term care home, not of their choosing and without their consent, with a daily fee of $1,800 a day. It goes on. The bill would forbid the use of physical restraints, however. Oh, well, that's good news. You're not going to tie up Grandma. That's good news. But it says a reasonable effort must be made to obtain consent. Speaking to reporters Wednesday, Calandra said hospitals should use their current powers, which he said have been on the books since 1979, to charge people, meaning a fee, to charge people who refuse to leave their bed, charge them the same rates as those without coverage under the Ontario Health Insurance Plan, under OHIP. Calandra said later patients should be forced to cough up a copay, upper limit $63.36 a day, $63.36 a day. And it goes on. We're going to have an expert on this a little later in the program, but I'm gathering your reaction here. $1,800 a day, though. Gloria on Bill 7. Gloria.
Yes. Hello, Rob.
Hi, Gloria. What do you think of this?
This is the new world, folks.
The new world. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, my parents would have gone from hospital to a relative, a daughter, son, whatever, right? That was how it was done.
That's how it was done.
Of course.
In the old school, yeah.
In the old school. That's why I say it's a different world.
Yeah.
But I don't see it as coercion. I see it as a fact of life.
Okay.
And yes, I do have relatives that were moved out of a hospital and into a nursing home that was miles away from anybody and everybody. And he did fine. Absolutely fine, came out of it and eventually got a place that was closer to everybody so he could see them before he died.
Okay.
But I don't see it as coercion. If they don't need medical care, they don't belong there.
They don't belong in the hospital.
It's simple. Look, if we were offering them a place on a sunny beach in the south.
Right, but let's say I born, raised, grew up in Ottawa, whatever. I want to spend my final year in Ottawa. I don't want to be in Arnprior or Renfrew or Smiths Falls or Brockville. The government is saying if I don't go to Brockville, just as an example, they'll ding me $1,800 a day.
Well, that's fair enough, isn't it? That's the cost
fair
of
enough.
staying where they are.
Gosh. Who can afford that, Gloria?
Well, it's like people who go away on vacation.
Okay.
How much do they pay?
Well,
you know, I mean,
I don't know. I had never paid $1,800 a day.
Not a day. No, you haven't. But there again, you haven't had a nurse and doctor on call at your fingertips.
True enough. True enough.
I mean, you know, we have to be reasonable, and I'm sure there's not that many out there. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering if the government wouldn't have been smarter to come up with some kind of a pay-at-home scheme where, you know, people can do a tax deduction or whatever, or get paid by the government to stay in their home and take their elderly relative.
But there comes a time when people do have to, unfortunately, either spend some time in a hospital or their families can't take care of them, or they can't take care of themselves.
Yes,
right?
And I've seen both cases. I know how it works.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Gotta go. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. We are monitoring the Ontario legislature right now. Can you call that up for me, please, Noah? Okay. Expect the question period to begin in This will probably lead the questioning, I suspect.
Thank you. Member for Nickel Belt has informed me she has a point of order.
A point of order, Speaker. I seek unanimous consent to move a motion to allow an emergency debate on the healthcare crisis this afternoon during orders of the day.
That's France Jelena.
Unanimous consent of the House to move a motion to allow an emergency debate
Northern
on the
Ontario
crisis this afternoon during orders of the day. Agreed? No. Heard some no's.
So no emergency debate. France Jelena has tried that every day in the legislature.
Now time for oral questions.
Here's question period.
I recognize the Leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. My question to the Premier. This government is giving itself the power to sign people up for long-term care homes they don't want to go to. Yesterday, the long-term care minister admitted to media that they will use financial coercion to make them go. He said, I quote, should a hospital charge them? Absolutely, end quote. Why does this government believe that a hospital stay should end with a bill?
The Premier.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Speaker, we can't keep doing the same old thing over and over again, pouring billions of dollars into the health system and expect a different result. We need new solutions to old problems that the Liberals and NDP created. The opposition will always find reasons to say no. They will keep defending the status quo, saying no for the sake of saying no. Mr. Speaker, we refuse to accept the status quo. The opposition want people who should be in long-term care in hospital beds. Hospital beds weren't made for long-term care patients. And what's happening is clogging up the emergency departments, delaying surgeries. These problems are decades in the making, created by years of refusal to act under the Liberals and NDP. The Liberals and NDP who caused the problem are now complaining about the solution, Mr. Speaker. Their solution is to do absolutely nothing, to change nothing.
Supplementary question.
Well, Speaker, cruelty is not a solution. These seniors, these people with disabilities, they've done nothing wrong. What's wrong is the broken long-term care and home care systems that have been cut and privatized to the bone. Late yesterday, we learned the government plans to ram this legislation through without any hearings or opportunity to hear from frontline workers and from families whose lives will be devastated by these changes. Why is the government so unwilling to hear from families and frontline workers who will be devastated by this bill?
Members, please take their seats. Premier?
The opposition, they want to keep the status quo, which means longer wait lists, less hospital beds for people who need them. Mr. Speaker, according to the Ontario Hospital Association, there's 6,000 beds being taken up by the alternative level of care patients in hospitals. It's the highest number in the history of this country. And in the last 3 months, we saw 1,000 increase. The policy is absolutely necessary. It will free up 2,500 beds. The opposition will always say no to building more hospitals, no to hiring more nurses, no to building more hospital beds. They'll say no to shorter surgery wait times, no to making the system better. The Liberals and NDP built 611 long-term care beds. We're building 31,000 new long-term care beds, investing $4.9 billion, hiring more than 27,000 long-term care staff.
Thank you. Thank you. The final supplementary.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, this government is sacrificing people in what may be their final months. It's separating them from their spouse, their sons and daughters, their essential caregivers. When someone cannot afford to pay to stay in a hospital, how far away is the government willing to move them?
The Government House Leader and Minister of Long-Term Care.
Mr. Speaker, I truly don't think the opposition understand what we are trying.
All right, a little taste of question period. We've somehow lost our feed from the Ontario Legislature. Apologize for that. Kevin and Ruth, you hang on the line. When we come back, it's 10:45, gathering your reaction to Bill 7, this hospital and long-term care bill on the Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour here on City News.
The sun's calling, change with the warning. Oh, I won't win anything if I give everything.
I was so excited when I found out that I was given this grant to be able to make this concert, because I knew it was going to be the first opportunity that I was able to play these songs for others. You know, this album was recorded really, truly in isolation. Like everybody else, we were locked down for a bit. So you're going to see, I think, the joy of playing live, of being together.
For me, as someone who owns a business in Ottawa that's directly working with music, I own a recording studio, it is important because it gives a sense of confidence in terms of having support from a lot of different places. We all know in Canada, there are all kinds of city, provincial, and federal people who provide funding for artists, and just seeing how invested Ottawa is and expanding the reputation of Ottawa as a music and entertainment city, running a business in that city, it makes you just feel better that someone's going to support you, help you, and have your back.
Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in. So this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this.
Oh, I feel like I need to keep pinching myself. It's an amazing experience and opportunity for us, so thank you so much. It's been a long couple months. Our last show was in December. This is the first time we've actually been in the same room together since. So it's really an amazing opportunity for us and the beautiful theater, and to have Rogers here, and thank you, Oh Mike, and so it's a dream come true.
I'm here with one of my best friends, Alex, and we haven't performed in almost 2 years because of COVID. And it feels really good to be back on a big stage like Meridian, and I'm really honored that you guys invited me here today.
Having an organization that lets the artists do their thing with such a range of styles and influence, and to kind of have that ability to meet the public and to meet the people who would listen to them, can't be overstated. So super excited about it. I know a lot of musicians in town and a lot of music lovers in town who are really excited about it too. So I mean, it's an event in which there's talk, you know, there's a lot of buzz around it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes on for a long time and does a lot of great things for local musicians and connecting them with the listeners that love them.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Okay. I don't know. I just wonder politically, I understand their goal. They want to get people who should be in long-term care homes into long-term care homes and out of hospitals. I just wonder, is the Ford government really going to hit senior citizens, you know, grandma and grandpa, mom, dad, with an $1,800 hospital bill? Because mom or dad or grandma and grandpa don't like the long-term care option that's been put before them by the government. Because, I don't know, but by the sounds of it, it's one of the options that the government's looking at. It doesn't really scream, I'm in it for the little guy. What do you think about this? 750-1310. Charlotte Lake. Kevin, thank you for waiting, Kevin.
Who could have predicted all these baby boomers, needing health care at the same time?
Who would have ever predicted that, Kevin?
Yeah, that's right out of left.
Great planning, right? Yeah, great planning, right? Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying, sure. But, to the heart of the matter, if let's say your mom is in the Civic, she's on a list, she wants to, be in a long-term care home here in Ottawa, and the government says, well, we don't have any long-term care homes in Ottawa, but we have one in wherever, Charlotte Lake. And you're going there, and if you say no, we're going to send you a bill for $1,800 a day for every day you're in the hospital.
Well, I think that's definitely wrong, but I think if push came to shove, that could be an option, but I think we need to exhaust some of our other options first.
Yeah. Well, not only is it going to be an option, it's going to be the law in a week.
Well, one of the things, like in the height of the pandemic, you know, the military came in and gave 750 temporary field beds. Like that, now that our ERs are actually closing, that would be a not bad place to start. Okay. But, you know, they haven't even exercised that yet.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. I'm getting a little bit of something in the background there. I might be on Kevin's end. Thank you. Ruth in Ottawa. Ruth, you're on City News. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Ruth.
I think we need to look at things somewhat logically, and obviously I don't think it's a good solution to send people from Ottawa to Brockville. You have to have people, you know, in somewhat close proximity to their family members. Having said that, we also have a situation where people are in hospitals for months and months on end. This is not new.
No, not new.
And who are taking up beds, nurses, doctors, which we are all know we are in short supply.
You're absolutely right.
I have a friend, a doctor who works at a long-term care home in Ottawa, and he said there are beds that are empty in there. They're not filled. Now, is that possibly that particular long-term care home people don't want to go to? I believe it might be one of them that has no air conditioning. Okay. So, but, you know, we really need to, I mean, Premier Ford is right. We have to look at things differently. And we have every solution, everybody's saying no, 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 no. So where are we with this? If you need a doctor and a nurse in a hospital and you can't get a bed because it's being taken up by someone who really shouldn't be in the hospital, you're going to complain about that too. So we need to be...
What's the solution then, right?
I think the solution is actually to have somebody go to a long-term care home that may not be their first choice, but within their city, and then wait to get on the long-term care home that they want.
What if it's 30 kilometers away?
Pardon me?
The government says it might be 30 kilometers away for a city like Ottawa.
You know what? If that's what has to be done, that has to be done. 30 kilometers is not Ottawa to Brockville.
No.
So, you know, that's just, we're in that situation. Like, what are we going to do? People, let's say, who are in Charlotte Lake, as an example, your caller, that maybe they have to go to Perth.
Right.
Or Kingston. You live in a rural area, you're going to travel farther. That's just the way it is.
Well, in the north, according to our correspondent in Toronto, for the north, they're looking at 300 kilometers.
Well, that's excessive.
I would suggest that's excessive, yeah.
Yeah, but I think we need to sort of get...
Like if you're in Kenora, and you're 95 years old, do you want to be 300 kilometers away in a long-term care home by yourself from your family?
No.
Right?
But the thing is, those are, in my opinion, different situations that you have to look at for people who live in rural areas. But I think we need to get our heads out of the sand and say, what's going on here? We have a healthcare system that's crumbling. We have to do something right now, whether it be...
Gotcha. Drastic times call for drastic measures. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you. Helen in Westboro. Good morning, Helen.
Good morning.
Morning, Helen.
I'm thinking about people that are in the hospital for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's not the way I'd want to end my life.
Right.
So a long-term care, great.
Yeah.
You know, or rather, you know, the best thing is to have the person come back home and have someone come in. If you're, what kind of care do you need? Do you need somebody to come in and help you bathe and give you food? Then you get... You make arrangements for that.
Yeah.
Or another thing that the Ontario government could do is to get a motel and have people go there and have a nurse and doctor on staff there.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, that's I had to go to the hospital a year ago with a stroke.
Okay.
And luckily for them too, they didn't keep me.
Okay.
And I came home.
Okay.
And I would have come home. I would have snuck out of the hospital. I'm not going to die in a hospital. I wanted to.
You wanted out of there.
I wanted out of there, and I'd wanted to be at my home. And you know what? After a while, give me a pill. When you're a certain age, you've got to accept the inevitable.
Okay. All right, Helen. I didn't know that about you, Helen. That's the first time you told me about that.
What?
That you had a stroke. You didn't tell me about that. Okay.
Well, you broke my heart when you got married. That's what.
Oh, okay. All right, Helen. Okay. You're wonderful. Thank you again. Bye-bye. Okay. Interesting thoughts, yeah. Okay. I don't know. You talk to the callers for so long, you get to kind of know them, you know. Darlene. Hi, Darlene.
Hi there, Rob.
Hi, Darlene.
Yeah.
What do you think about this?
I think it's absolutely sickening.
Sickening, okay.
You could have seen this coming decades and decades ago.
Yeah.
And this isn't a democracy. We see it more and more, like no debate, no anything, just do it. And
sounds like they might get this done by the end of the week.
I'm sorry.
They might get this done by the end of the week.
Oh, yeah. And let me tell you, it's no treat. I saw my parents, my brother-in-law in both hospital settings and in long-term care. You walk in the door of a long-term care, all smiles, lovely, and but it's hell inside, I'd say, for the majority of the places. I saw my mother, who was just fastidious and a lady, and they threw her laundry bag of urine-soaked clothes in the closet. The blinds were tilted, the air conditioner leaking on the floor. You know, it just goes on.
Yeah.
No one deserves this. It really sounds like I can't help but compare it to an experiment on how cruel we can be to the most vulnerable people in the earth. Okay. They're looking to you. They're looking to what role does the CEOs of hospitals play? The government, well, I think most people have just given up on most of them. They're old. They're frail.
Yeah.
They need some dignity. You're not going to find it.
Yeah. Okay, Darlene. I got you loud and clear, Darlene. Thank you. And take one more just before the news in Hallville. John. Hi, John.
Good morning.
Yeah,
Good
hi,
morning.
John. What do you think, John?
Well, I think the distances are probably reasonable.
Okay.
30 kilometers, that's like...
For a city, for an urban area, it says. That's what they're looking at. They say it's not finalized.
And if you're looking at in the north, well, say you're in Long Lac, Ontario, you know, you're 2 hours from Hearst, 300 kilometers from Kapuskasing.
Mm-hmm.
Hearst has got 2 motels, so, you know, it is what it is. How long has the problem been going on? That's what I'm curious to know. Is
long time.
20 years, 30 years? Like it's crazy. And
as long as I've been in the news business, they've been talking about bed blockers. You know that. You've heard that term.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But if you've got people who potentially could die in an ambulance or could die because an ambulance can't come because they're waiting outside the emergency department.
True enough.
Then it becomes a choice. Who's right? And it's not a good choice.
Gosh, there are no easy choices these days, John, when it comes to health care.
What I'm wondering is what are people paying now? Like I know 20 years ago, somebody in a long-term care home between, well, I won't say where it is because I didn't identify it, but they were paying $2,500 a month then.
I talked to somebody this morning who was paying in one home on the low side $2,800 and in one of the better homes $4,500 a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's
for their mother.
They were paying $2,500 20 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, I got to go, John.
On an income of $2,560, they got to keep $60 for incidentals.
Right.
And the rest went to the home.
Yeah, no easy choices.
And it was sort of like, sounded like a bit like a one flew over the cuckoo's nest type situation.
Right. I got to go, John. Thank you. The news is coming up, and then we'll check in with my friend Bruce McIntyre, Valley View. He's with the Eganville leader. This is City News.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on a pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, August 25th. Good morning. I am Damilola Unime. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, sun and cloud, 21 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Police and the bailiff could have gone to St. Brady's Church just after midnight to exercise an eviction order, but so far that has not been done. There were confrontations last night between the United People of Canada and local residents. Now, witnesses are saying there were at least 2 swarmings of area residents and at least 6 police cruisers were called to the scene. Heather lives in Lower Town and she tells City News she just wants this to be over.
It's a roller coaster. We got our hopes up, we got our hopes smashed, we got our hopes up again, we got our hopes smashed. It's like we want to believe that what we understand to be a lawful eviction with what we understand in reported by everyone except for the church group. We want to see it happen.
And City News will continue to follow this developing story for you. With the weather forecast for Ottawa and the Valley, here is City News meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll have sun and cloud for the most part today, just a slight chance of showers, a high about 26 degrees, not quite as muggy as it was yesterday. Showers more likely through the late evening, especially overnight though, 15 for the low. Today's high near 26.
City News time is 11:03. The Ottawa Catholic District School Board says masks will be optional when students return to in-person class this fall. The board says all ventilation systems at its buildings have been tested and are all in perfect working condition to ensure ventilation. Also, the 3 major post-secondary institutions in the Ottawa area say they will not require masks or proof of vaccination in order to attend in-person classes this coming school school year. When schools resume in a couple of weeks, the mask mandate at U Ottawa, Carleton and Algonquin College will not be reinstated. I am Damilola Unime. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Time for Valley View with Bruce McIntyre. He's with the Eganville Leader, and he's in Renfrew, where he tells us he is actually covering a breaking news event right now. Bruce McIntyre with some breaking news. What's happening, Bruce?
Well, Rob, I was having a nice bagel, minding my own business. I look at the window, I saw these vehicles whipping by, and it's literally about 50 yards from my house. I just spoke to one of the officers. Air conditioner was on fire. That's why the fire is here, but they also took somebody into custody, and it's the officer I'm speaking with is the head of the street crimes unit. So usually when they're involved, it's serious, either drugs, something that's very serious, theft. So we have right now 5 marked cruisers, 3 undercover unmarked vehicles, and 4 fire trucks. Oh, and a paramedic was thrown in for good cause.
Wow.
Yeah. So it doesn't appear anyone's hurt. It's a second floor unit where the smoke's coming out of, and they said it was an air conditioner put on fire. And now the head of the street crime unit looking at me smiling because the rule is I do not get a picture of his vehicle.
I see. Okay.
So anyway,
right.
it doesn't appear too serious.
But they're wondering if it's, I guess they must be wondering if it's deliberate.
That's what it appears to be. That's why you have so much manpower down here. So obviously they had this eye on the individual previously, and when the street crime unit came in, I saw them take him in. So yeah, right now it happened literally 5 minutes ago. So that's breaking.
That is great. So where is this again? You're in Renfrew. Whereabouts in Renfrew?
Corner of Prince and Lockheil.
Prince and Lockheil. Okay. And what kind of structure?
It is I think it's a fourplex. It is a multi-unit dwelling, and it is about 2 blocks, literally 2 blocks off the main downtown core. If people know Renfrew, it's 2 blocks south of Finnegan's. So.
Okay. Fire's under control. Out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, the paramedics are dealing with the individual taken into custody, and it's all under control. They're just basically chatting up, seeing what's new and what their plans are this weekend, I think. But it's all under control.
Okay.
And
read about it in an upcoming edition of the Eganville Leader. Okay. All right.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I'm just going to walk right now a little quieter. So, come on, Clancy. Sorry, Clancy goes in there. He's got a safety vest on, so he's all right.
Clancy is the boxer, right?
That's the 4-year-old boxer. He goes where I go.
Yeah. He's what we call the Cub reporter for the Eganville Leader. So Bruce is with me. He's with us every week. Missed you yesterday. Glad you could come on today.
No problem.
And the Eganville Leader is Renfrew County's largest paid circulation newspaper, independently owned since 1902, now into its 121st year. This is edition number 9. Hit newsstands yesterday, and quite likely maybe the most colorful edition of the Eganville Leader ever, because you are covering extensively the powwow, right?
Wow. I think wow to the powwow. It was just incredible. I was Saturday.
Yeah.
And the opening ceremony, as I said, when the Chief Jocko and the elders started the parade in, I said, I think I recognize that individual. Yes, it was the Grand Chief. And it's like, wow, that's quite the honor for the little powwow to have the Grand Chief here. And it was
of the Assembly of First Nations.
Yes, thank you. Just get my bearings here. Yeah, it's just amazing to see her here. And wow, and she did of course, which the reference was this year was perseverance and getting through the system, especially with the apology by Pope Francis recently. So that was the big theme, and she spoke at that, and just the need to reconcile and the need for people to come together and healing. I know around here, up in the Valley, Rob, it's been a really eye-opener, generational eye-opener. Best way to say it, because I know a few of the residents who live up there that were in this residential school system. I've spoken to them at length, and it's something it's not just them, it's generational. It's a multi-generational curse on our society. It really is. These families have just been devastated. I mean, just imagine being 4 or 5 years old, torn away from your family and taken to another school like hundreds of miles away. And wow.
Yeah.
So, but the powwow itself, the celebration.
Yeah. So this Pikwaganagon, we should be say for Pikwaganagon and the Algonquin First Nation of Pikwaganagon. Now it's interesting. I'd be curious to know. Because this summer, one of the events that we went to the powwow for Kitigan-Zibi, the Algonquin First Nation Kitigan-Zibi, on the Quebec side up near Maniwaki.
Maniwaki, yeah.
And it was massive, like huge crowd. It was, and as you say, they don't call them costumes, it's called regalia, just spectacular, but an amazing crowd. Like people go to it as an event, and not just First Nations people, like all kinds of people from all across the region. And I'm wondering if it was that kind of event for Pikwaganagon.
It was our 33rd, minus the last 2 years with COVID, but 33rd, and this by far is the biggest. I mean, the 2019 we thought was big. This was bigger. Again, parking was at a premium, and just a lot of out of town visitors as well. A lot of faces that didn't recognize. So, just a wonderful celebration.
Yeah. And the dancers, the drummers. I mean, it's pretty cool, right? As you say, I think probably you and me are of the same vintage. We've never really been exposed to this kind of stuff, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I come from Kitchener, Ontario originally, and we next door was the Six Nations, the branch. And I knew nothing about residential schools. I got to plead ignorance. I consider myself kind of a smart guy. I knew nothing about residential schools, not a thing, until I went to school in Calgary. My roommate was doing her PhD on the residential school system, and I said, "What?" Well, I had not a clue. Not a clue. So, yeah, it's amazing. And now it's a very open topic. People talk about it, which is good. It's out there. It's sort of, I tell people it's kind of our South Africa apartheid. It's something you don't want to talk about, but you have to.
Yeah.
To get to make the healing.
So there are dozens of food vendors, craft vendors, like 240 dancers. I mean, it sounds like it was quite an event. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And Rob, I've got great news for you.
Okay.
Your favorite politician is back making a run for mayor.
Oh, NAW. Tell me about that. Okay.
NAW. Former Mayor Deb Farr, yes, the one and only, is coming back. For your listeners, she was perhaps the most controversial, interesting candidate to ever hold the mayor's chair for 4 years. She called 911 in the middle of a meeting, said she felt threatened.
That's right.
She texted her lawyer because she wanted legal advice, and just the bizarreness. Every week was something you never knew was going to happen. We had full gallery. There's 40 people every week. They had reporters coming down from Ottawa. They couldn't believe that they were hearing down there, and they left shaking their head. Wow, it really is that bad. So she's going up against incumbent Mayor James Rose, who defeated her last time. So that'll be an interesting race. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in Renfrew. It was a quiet race until the expansion story came out. That they're $4.85 million over budget of a $21 million project. So that's going to be on the backs of the Renfrew ratepayers. But it was a perfect storm. There's no one to blame.
What expansion are you talking about?
I'm sorry, at Mattaway Park, our athletic center. They're putting in a second ice pad. They're putting in.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's a recreational addition, and they're over budget by almost $5 million on a $21 million project. Ouch.
Wow.
But it all comes down to pandemic, Rob. It really does. It comes down to the fact they couldn't get their supplies. They couldn't get the labor. And when they had the labor, I didn't know they'd been on strike for a month. They were all collective bargaining expired at the same time. So they were off for 6 weeks. They lost that. The weather, supply chain, just this, that, and everything. Just a perfect storm of everything bad. Could go bad, went wrong. And it's a huge price tag. So.
What do you know about this woman? I think she's from Killaloe area. She's been... they're looking at her allegations of defrauding minor sports organizations.
Yeah, she's actually down in the Brunel-Linddock Raglan area. Miss Malone, don't know much about her, just charged, brought over $5,000. And I think we're seeing more and more of this, unfortunately, in minor hockey. It's, you're trusting your people to have the good of the players involved. And this is the second or third fraud, not around here, but I've read about that's unfortunately taking advantage of the parents, just getting the money, and we'll see what happens. So she's scheduled to go to court next month, and it'll be interesting. I mean, especially in a small community, everybody knows everybody, and wow, that's the person you trusted, and we'll have to see what happens there. Not too much information came out of that so far. So it's wait and see.
All right. So they had the World Juniors in Edmonton. It was the whole thing was kind of under a cloud. It's weird to have the World Juniors in August and all that stuff. But nevertheless, exciting gold medal game. Team Canada wins because of what they're already calling in the Ottawa Valley, the McTavish miracle.
Why not?
Why not, right? Yeah.
Mason McTavish, his dad, Dale, was a resident. He went on to play in the NHL for a bit. He's a coach. And his son is following his footsteps, named captain of the team as well. That's very exciting. And I haven't actually seen this play yet, but I guess he made the defensive play of the century to see how he saved the game. And so he's the miracle, the McTavish miracle. It's hard to say him sometimes. And he was also the first draft pick, which is a high honor for the Anaheim Ducks. So they made him the first pick in 2022, which is an honor in itself, and all from the small town Eganville. So congratulations to him. He led the tournament with 17 points. That's not bad, the leader of the tournament. And as you say, it was under a cloud. Honestly, Rob, I didn't even know what was going on until halfway into it. As you say, August hockey just doesn't go together usually. So it's unfortunate this time of year, but congratulations to him.
Okay.
And his dad is following his dad's footsteps.
Good.
His dad so what else is up in the valley? I'm trying to think. It's been just kind of...
Well, I mean, we've been following, I don't know how long we've been following this saga about the RVs on Lake Clear. I mean, for people who have, maybe they're not familiar with our conversation. So you have this place, Lake Clear. And in some parts of cottage country, rural areas, a lot of people have RVs parked on their properties, right? And I guess in Lake Clear, it was getting kind of out of hand, so they tried to pass a rule. What was the rule? How many were you? No more than five?
No more than five.
No more than five, right? That was the rule. No more than five. So I don't know how long have they been studying this thing?
This has been going back
5 years?
Terms of council. Yeah, it's easily 2 terms of council.
2 terms of council. And they're going to keep studying it. Like, this is a small place, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to do a $65,000 study.
That's a half a point on the levy, if you want to get down the numbers. 0.05 the levy is going to go towards this. And you can see why people are outraged. It's just enough's enough.
Enough's enough, yeah.
If you live in Eganville or Foymount, you have nothing to do with that lake, and they're spending all this money on this another study.
Ridiculous.
And of course, that study will bring other studies, and it just goes on. And there's the proverbial kicking the can down the road. Unfortunately, and the ratepayers this is the first time, they've been going on this, the first time the ratepayers have said, okay, this is getting out of control. This is enough. So, the word is that some of the councillors are trying to rig it that they have a study so they can continue this chance to have the RVs there. I don't know. It's all hearsay, but this will be the election issue again in Eganville. I thought before it might be the dog kennel, but this will be the election issue. They closed the dog kennel in Morsher Valley. They can close that for $28,000 a year, but they can spend $65,000 on a study. You kind of weigh the pros and cons there. And it's the only dog kennel in the area. I mean, if it closes, there's nowhere to take your dog. You'll go to the Humane Society, and it's gone. Whereas here, you can go down the street and say, my dog's lost. You can pick it up. You won't be able to do that anymore. They service the entire Ottawa Valley, lower half.
All right. Well, look, we got to wrap it up, but I'm just looking through your paper here. Thank you again. September 17th, 2022 is the KHR Loggers Festival. Loggers Sports Festival.
It's coming up fast.
I've never been to that. Have you ever been to that?
Oh yes, I've gone 4 or 5 times.
At Round Lake. Okay.
Yeah, it's all things logging. It's all
things logging. Yeah, it actually sounds pretty cool. So they have junior loggers. Like you could be a logger at 8 years old.
You can.
8 years old. Can you imagine 8 years old out there with a chainsaw or something? Oh my God.
They're wheeling the axe. Young Paul Bunyan.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, if you're looking to compete, all the information is in the Eganville Leader for all you budding loggers out there.
I think we'll nominate Dave.
So look, thanks for the breaking news.
No problem.
All right, and all things in the Eganville Leader this week, and the update from Up the Line. Stay well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all the best. All the best to Trish too. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, you betcha. Thanks, Rob.
All right. Bye-bye. That is Bruce McIntyre, Valley View, Eganville Leader, Rob Snow Show, City News.
That same old old train that brought me here is gonna carry me away again.
Keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Let's get back into the issue that has dominated the Ontario legislature this week. It's Bill C-7. And we know that there is an issue with people who are in hospital, and they would be better served if there was a room for them in a long-term care home. The Ontario government, under this legislation, is proposing that people may be charged a fee if they can be discharged from the hospital but refuse to go to a long-term care home of their choice. They would have to take one that is available, perhaps one that is even outside of the community in which they live. So for more information on this, we're joined by lawyer Jane Meadus, back with us on the Rob Snow Show on City News, counsel and institutional advocate with the Advocacy Center for the Elderly. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
What do you think of this Bill 7?
I don't think much of it.
Don't think much of it. Okay. All right. Why do you say that?
To be blunt.
Yeah.
This is a piece of legislation which is being used to, again, fix the healthcare system on the back of seniors. And specifically, some of the most vulnerable and sick seniors that we have in the province, by pushing them into long-term care homes that are likely going to be far from their family and support systems, to places that they don't want to go, potentially to homes that they believe are substandard, that, all sorts of, issues. This is, it's really trying to clear them out of the hospital, and it's basically blaming these seniors who've done nothing but get old in a system that hasn't made good plans for them.
Okay. The Premier during the question period this morning said there are more seniors in hospitals who shouldn't be in hospitals, they should be in long-term care homes, than ever before, and that the status quo is unacceptable, and that this is part of the government's innovation agenda when it comes to healthcare. This is not a new problem. It's been around a long time, and we have to do something about it. And this is what they're going to do about it.
Well, he is correct. It is a problem that's been around for a very long time, and it's his second mandate. So, this isn't something that just cropped up last week.
No.
This has been an ongoing problem for a very long time.
Yep.
It's been an issue since I've been working in this area for 27 years, and it's probably been an issue for most of that time. The fact that all of a sudden they say, well, we have to do this and ram through legislation in a week, that's not fixing the problem. That's just downloading it on someone else.
Downloading it, in this case, onto
the seniors and onto the long-term care homes.
Okay.
And, many of these long-term care homes themselves are struggling with staffing issues, and other kind of issues.
Yeah. Okay. These figures that are in the news media, I'm hoping that you can maybe shed some light on these. $62 or $63 for a co-payment. What would that be for? What would that reflect?
So when you're in the hospital and you are finished your acute stay and you're waiting to go to a long-term care home, and you would go but for the fact that the beds you've applied for are not available, the hospital is entitled to charge you this co-payment, which is a maximum of that $62 a day. And there's a rate reduction and things, and there's some rules around who can get charged and stuff. But that's something that hospitals normally charge and charge every day across the province.
Various media reports put this uninsured fee, as it's described, at between $1,500 and $1,800 a day. Jane Meadus, if you don't leave this hospital and go to this long-term care bed, we at this hospital will send you a bill for $1,500 to $1,800 a day. What would that bill be for?
So in the current situation, if one of the homes that you have chosen on your list comes up and you turn that bed down, then the hospital says, well, you've now refused a lawful bed offer in a long-term care home, so you're no longer entitled to OHIP coverage in our hospital, and therefore we're going to charge you the uninsured rate.
The uninsured rate, which would be between $1,500 to $1,800 a day.
They can pretty much charge what they want.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So look, we know it's a problem. The figure the Premier used today was 6,000. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's his number. So let's go with that. We have 6,000 people in the hospital who should be in long-term care homes.
That's incorrect.
Okay.
There are 6,000, potentially 6,000, what they call alternative level of care patients.
Alternative level of care patients.
And that only means that you're waiting to go elsewhere, that you're in an acute care bed you don't need. You're waiting to go elsewhere.
Okay.
Only about...
Maybe not long-term care, could be home care, could be something else? Or
it could be rehab. Only about 40% of those are waiting for long-term care. The other 60% are waiting for chronic care, rehab, home care, other things.
Wow. Okay. All right. So this is okay. Now this is to deal with the situation with acute care and getting people into long-term care. You don't like what they're doing. What's a preferable way to alleviate the issue?
Well, I think,
trends?
first of all, we need to stop threatening people and pushing people. We need to be working with the patients, and if they're incapable, they're substitute decision makers, and families if they're supporting people, and explain why staying in hospital is not necessarily the best thing for people, and are there other options that they can make instead of having just someone choose someone and throw someone into a home you don't want to go to. I think that there are better ways of working with that system, but we also need more things like rehab beds and chronic care. That's also a huge problem in the system, but we're not talking about that because that would require the government to do other things that they're not willing to do.
Okay. Wow. Okay, we'll see what happens. They say this could be done by the end of the week, by the sounds of it.
It sounds, well, I'm hearing it's potentially, but more likely early next week. Mm-hmm. They look like they're not going to committee. They're not going to go to committee. No,
they don't want to go to committee, no.
They don't want to have public consultations. They're just going to ram this through. This is something, I've never seen something go through like this on such a important topic. I'm shaking my head at the actions of the government at the moment.
Okay, Jane Meadus, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Lawyer, counsel, institutional advocate, Advocacy Center for the Elderly. 11:30, the news next, then the world with Professor Elliot Tepper. Rob Snow Show, City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, August 25th. Good morning. I'm Alex Gouge. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, it's 22 degrees, mostly cloudy, with a humidex of 25. Here's what's making news this hour. Police and a bailiff could have gone to St. Bridget's Church just after midnight to exercise an eviction order, but so far that has not been done. There were confrontations last night between the United People of Canada and local residents. Witnesses say there were at least 2 swarmings of area residents and at least 6 police cruisers were called to that area. Stats Canada says job vacancies reached another new high in June, climbing to 3.2%. The job vacancy rate was 5.9% in June, matching the record high reached in September last year. This comes as employees were looking to fill more than 1 million positions for a third consecutive month. The Ottawa Catholic District School Board says masks will be optional when students return to in-class this fall. The board says all ventilation systems at its building have been tested and are in perfect working condition to ensure ventilation. Also, the 3 major post-secondary institutions in the Ottawa area will not require masks or proof of vaccination in order to attend in-person classes this coming school year. When school resumes in a couple of weeks, the mask mandate at Ottawa, Carleton, and Algonquin College will not be reinstated. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Alex Gouch. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
It's time for our weekly look at the biggest international news stories with the help of Professor Elliot Tepper, Distinguished Senior Fellow at the Norman Patterson School of International Affairs at Carleton University. Welcome back, Professor.
Yes, nice hearing your voice, Rob.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you. It's kind of been, when you look at the news, when I look at what we're going to speak about this week, probably speak a little about Myanmar a little bit later, and now Ukraine and Russia, kind of a week of sad milestones.
Yeah.
Yesterday marked 6 months since Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, which coincided with Ukraine's Independence Day. 31 years since saying we're no longer part of the Soviet Union. 6 months of war in Europe. How would you describe the state of the conflict, Professor?
Well, let's kind of start at the very top and remind ourselves where we are. It might have been hard for people here to identify with what was going on, say, with Russia and Syria, and Russia in terms of Georgia and Chechnya. But this is, above all else, at the very top, a catastrophe for Ukraine. If you look out the window, if everybody's listening looks out the window, it's a country that looks just like us. It's been invaded by a very powerful neighbor with the intent of ending its existence as a nation state. So we have to remind ourselves what's going on here. The New York Times has provided a nice quick summary as of yesterday. Ukrainian civilians, they say, have paid a heavy price. It's believed, Rob, there's going to be tens of thousands of civilians killed so far in 6 months. The number of refugees is now surpassed 6.6 million. Refugees are people who were sitting in their homes and doing their normal things until 6 months ago, when suddenly Russia, unprovoked, attacked their neighboring state. And now we call them refugees instead of, neighbors and friends. The military losses, the estimate is about, and this is closely held by Ukraine, about 9,000 Ukrainians have been killed in the military, but as many as 25,000 Russians may have been killed. Now, both of these are estimates, and I personally suspect it's higher on each side. But nevertheless, Ukraine has lost about 20% of its territory. The financial cost is enormous, in the billions of dollars. But also we have the situation of as we now know over and over again, you and I have talked about it, the whole question of world hunger as a result of this, because the ports of Ukraine have been closed by the Russians. Only recently has there been some movement on that.
Yeah.
So there's
at a time, if I could just jump in there, at a time when there's already terrible famine in parts of Africa, and Ukraine was a major supplier of grain to Africa.
For Africa.
Right, yeah.
So when you say, who's backing Russia in this and who isn't, places like Africa can't be fussy now. They have to say, when you're starving, you take what you can get. So I think right off the top, we have to recall that this is really a disaster for Ukraine. Second of all, I think as a top of the line item, it's a quagmire for Russia. Russia's not winning this war, but at the same time, it can't afford to lose the war, and that puts us all and particularly Ukraine, of course, in a terrible situation. Yesterday, as you point out, there was a big anniversary, and how did Russia mark that anniversary? They committed another war crime. They launched missiles at a train station. This is deliberately targeting civilians. And again, this was an unprovoked war in the first place.
Yeah.
So Putin is all in, and his own survival, I think, is all tied up in this. The Russian economy has been battered by sanctions, but They are getting approximately, Rob, €1 billion a day in oil and gas revenue. They have complete control of the media, successful suppression of dissent, but this war continues to go on. So it's a real quagmire for them.
Just on that, things like the sanctions, for example, and blocking shipments of energy. You remember the banking system and the crackdown on the ability to draw upon foreign reserves and these sorts of things. I thought that would have a bigger effect on Russia but 6 months in, it doesn't seem to have had the kind of effect I thought it would.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? Or?
Absolutely. Part of it is the revenue that keeps coming in that fuels the war machine and basically protects the regime from the results of the consequences of the sanction. You and I have talked about this in the past as kind of a race. Will our nerve crack? Will our ability to survive this in terms of the dislocations in terms of prices, inflation at the pump, and how much we pay for gas, is he going to be able to outlast us in this quagmire for them? And that's the race that's going on. I think the other major earthquake, the other major top line here is it's a geopolitical earthquake for Europe, and you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Mr. Putin has created a new Europe, as we've been talking. It wasn't long ago that NATO was being described as brain dead, and NATO is now more unified than ever. And indeed, not only is it more unified, but expanded. When you have Sweden and Norway, countries that have been not only historically neutral, but their identity as states and as players in the world is that they were neutral, have turned on a dime. And the accession of Norway and Sweden into a new and revived NATO is certainly one of the takeaways from what's gone on. Germany did a U-turn. Germany is by far the largest economy, perhaps the most important country in Europe, as we know. They were heavily dependent. They were, for a while, hesitant. What should we do about that? Now, Germany really has made a major U-turn. They want to get off oil dependency. We've been visited here. Chancellor Scholz was in Canada, as you know, till, yesterday? He spent 3 days here.
Yeah.
And the purpose was, we have to find alternatives. We have to get off Russian oil and its dependency. I think what they're doing here is too long-term for that. But the UK, this is hardly a ripple. The UK just announced last week it is for the first time ever completely independent of Russian energy supplies. So the earthquake in Europe,
and for Germany, I mean, a lesson learned the hard way.
Yeah.
Right. So
it was a good gamble. It was the post-Soviet Russia looked, including under Putin initially, looked like it was going to be very cooperative. Let's all integrate our economies together. Let's all be Europeans. There was even talk about nobody can remember.
Let's make Russia part of NATO. Let's make Russia part of NATO. Yeah, sure.
So all of that's gone.
Yeah.
Now we realize that it was a very bad gamble. It seemed like a good gamble. It was a bad gamble, and we're paying a heavy cost for that. I think perhaps the final conclusion here is that there's no end in sight.
Yeah.
In terms of 6 months on, we find that when President Zelensky says, as he did at the United Nations yesterday at Security Council, the Ukrainians are fighting for all of us. I think he's correct. There is no, at the minute, end in sight after 6 months of war.
Yeah.
You and I have talked already about one of my ongoing concerns, as you well know, is the nuclear threat.
Yeah.
That comes out of all of this. The Russians took over Zaporizhia, and Europe's largest power plant, which has, 5 or 6 nuclear plants inside it, and they've made it into a fortress. They're lobbing missiles out of it, knowing you can't fire back in. It's being run under duress by Ukrainian technicians. So we have accidental nuclear threat there. Mr. Putin can control the media, but he cannot, control which way the wind blows. So there's a nuclear threat there, but remember, again, we're talking about big picture at the minute. The big picture here is that there's been a very fine line that the West has been walking, led by Mr. Biden, the president of the U.S., between escalation, really helping Ukraine because Ukraine proved so able in fighting off the war machine that was, the initial blitz that was supposed to end the Ukrainian state. That didn't work out for the Russians. But then there's been this constant escalation while avoiding World War III. We have another illustrious visitor right now. The Secretary General of NATO is making a rare trip to Canada. He said earlier, NATO cannot provide a no-fly zone because that would mean attacking Russian planes and Russian bases, perhaps, and that would mean World War III. And that's basically been the fine line that, and we're part of this. How do you escalate the armaments available to Ukraine so they can really carry this war on? We've talked last week about a shift in the war where the Ukrainians are now operating behind enemy lines for the first time. And Crimea, there were explosions. There's a lot of mysteries going on. But the basic bottom line here is that there's no end in sight, and the Ukrainian people continue to pay the cost.
When we come back, Canada and China and missing opportunities in Asia with Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Electric Sport RC is a indoor RC facility with 3 different courses, all under one roof. We have bashing, crawling, and racing. And bashing you can see just right here to my left. It's a dirt track, kind of like a skate park, but for RC trucks. Change it up regularly. It's a lot of fun. Kids just love to rip through the dirt, and so do adults. And then right behind me over here is our crawler track. You essentially drive an RC truck, one of these bigger ones, over an obstacle course made out of rocks, wood, and dirt, and other things. We've got some bridges, some rope bridges, all sorts of challenges. Very challenging and addictive, and it's fun to do with kids and parents alike. And then we also have the race course, which is 10,000 square feet and 600 tons of clay.
Wow.
It's great for taking all sorts of cars around, but we also have a racing community of about 30 drivers. They tinker with their cars. It's a really good entry point for kids to learn about electronics and engineering while they try to edge their competition for the thrill of the win.
What a great, Dan, as I said, I can see it becoming, addictive and, people working on their machines constantly to improve them and that sort of thing. So you have different sort of days, right? So let's talk about Wednesday nights, first of all. What's the setup for Wednesday nights?
Wednesday night, it's about 30 drivers who get together. It's a pretty intense competition. They're really fine-tuning their cars. We also have Friday nights, which are a bit more relaxed. It's a bit less about who's winning and more just a great place for people to get more into the racing hobby. And then Saturdays and Sundays are just kind of a more open family type atmosphere. All 3 courses are there to play on, and it's just a great atmosphere with welcoming community and people who just want to enjoy playing with toys.
Dan, let's talk about the popularity of the sport, because as I said, I can see people immediately falling in love with it, whether you're doing it competitively or just recreationally. Over the years, what sort of popularity have you seen? Have you seen a growth in the popularity of the sport?
Absolutely, especially in the recent years with the pandemic. People have been buying RC cars to play with at home, in their yards, on the street, or in parks. And we built this facility because we wanted to have a place that's specifically built for RC cars that families can come to. It's just great for all ages, and you can get into any type of RC driving while you're here. If you just go on our website, you can Google Electric Sport RC to find us. You can sign up there for an introductory session. We'll show you around the facility, get you up and going.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News,
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
We're back with part 2 of The World with Professor Elliot Tepper, international affairs expert from Carleton University. I guess we could get into the nitty-gritty on Canada and the China file.
Yeah.
No, we haven't had an ambassador to China for 8 months. Judy Scrow is a longtime Liberal MP, along with some senators and MPs, plans a fall trip to Taiwan. But let's keep it bigger picture here, and what you think of Canada in the Asian context, and where there are opportunities and where we may be falling short as a country in taking advantage of those opportunities. Professor.
I think that's a good way to approach this. The nitty-gritties are interesting, but the big picture here is that what we are seeing in front of us right now, as a result of the announcement by Canada that a friendship group is going to go, is that China just keeps right on telling the world what kind of superpower, and it is a superpower, it wants to be under Xi Jinping. In terms of Taiwan, it's long been said by China that, oh yes, we'll get around to, they're going to be part of China, but the way they're going to do that is we're going to be so good at national rejuvenation that the people of Taiwan really, they're going to want to join us. They're going to voluntarily become part of the motherland. No one thinks that anymore under Xi Jinping's policy. So what we have now is that every time you hear an announcement like this, they're going to punish Canada somehow if this visit goes ahead. Well, that's just a loud announcement of this is who we are. We are going to be a different kind of a superpower than we said before. We're not going to join the world consensus. We're not going to be part of the global geopolitics as an accommodating partner. We are going to dominate, and that's what we're hearing.
Now, as well, we have about 5 or 6 minutes left here, Professor. It is the 5th anniversary of the Rohingya genocide exodus from Myanmar to Bangladesh. Began August 25th of 2017 with a quote-unquote clearance operation.
Yeah.
Clearance operation. Now, you're a real expert in this field, and you have explained some of the background and the history of this. For most of this country's history, it's been ruled by the military, right?
Yes, we did this quickly, a while ago now.
Yeah, a few weeks ago. So then you have this person, Aung San Suu Kyi. Right. And she won a Nobel Peace Prize because she was a democratic reformer. Fair enough. She was a democratic reformer.
She was the bearer of the democratic flag in an authoritarian system. Yes.
Yeah.
She was the ray of hope.
Yeah. She's honored in Canada with an honorary citizenship. We made her an honorary citizen of this country. I mean, one of the highest honors you can give anyone for this country. But then this happened, and she takes a lot of the blame in the international community. And the Senate, these decisions are made by the Senate in this country. She's stripped of Canadian citizenship for, quote, her role in gross human rights violations against the Rohingya people.
Right.
Was that fair that they did that to her? In hindsight, 5 years later,
she's the one we know. We don't know General Min, who's the leader of the coup. We were kind of caught, as was the rest of the world, in that Aung San Suu Kyi, keeping in mind that the military wrote the Constitution under which she managed to get some modicum of power. She has zero control over the military. The actions of the military are beyond her ken. Where she caught the opprobrium of the world is that something terrible was happening, and she, the most visible face, went to an international forum and was not forthright in condemning what her own government was doing.
She refused to blame the army.
And it's not her government.
Right.
And so it looked like she was protecting the army in what clearly was genocide. So that's why that's why she's paying the cost. But now look at the cost. It isn't stripping of Canadian citizenship. She was arrested immediately when the coup, when the military decided they couldn't stand any sliver of democracy, which she represents.
Right.
The National League for Democracy, her party, whenever there's an election, wins overwhelmingly, but she's prevented from taking office as leader. And now, after some feeble charges, she had some walkie-talkies in her closet, so let's lock her up a while. They've had 2 other extensions now, and I think, as you pointed out, she's now charged with terrorism charges, and she's going to be in jail for 17 years, and at her age, that means indefinitely, a lifetime sentence. We have a situation where I thought, if the world can't take a nice isolated case like Myanmar, like Burma, and deal with it effectively because it's manageable compared to dealing with China or Russia.
Yeah.
You could really make an example here of the world coming to the aid of an oppressed people, and that did not happen. What we have now instead, because you wanted an update on this, is the state of emergency has just been extended again by the military. The military leader has said that he will preside over free, fair, multi-party elections in the future, sometime next year maybe. But the NLD is a terrorist organization, so they won't be allowed to take part. So what we have is a military junta ruling by force and by acts of genocide, initially against the Rohingya, but now against any element of the population that raises its head.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the population which does not want this kind of dictatorship.
And the BBC reported this morning, the former ambassador to Myanmar, Bowman is her name, Vicky Bowman. She was arrested along with her husband this morning there, which is probably not good for them. I don't suspect.
No, it isn't going to be good for them, and it shows that the regime, the junta, will move against anybody. She was there as an ex-ambassador. She's married to a Burmese or Myanmar.
An artist, yeah.
She was involved in activities which, the regime just cannot tolerate, so they'll move even against a former diplomat who's got international recognition, therefore, because, the UK has to now say something. We have a situation, Rob, where through multiple sources, including, remember, Bob Rae was sent as a special envoy dealing with the Rohingya. This has been declared a genocide.
Yes.
Genocidal intent, as you, I think, put it in your introduction. This is unambiguous. The Rohingya are a minority. They've been pushed into 40,000 or so have gone to India, but they're Muslim. This is not a good environment for them right now. And about a million refugees are now inside Bangladesh. They've been there for this 5 years, and Bangladesh says, we can't handle this, so we're doing 2 things. We're going to move them, some of them anyway, to this Charland. This is... they're in Cox's Bazar and then offshore on an island, basically. I've been to Cox's Bazar. I went there to watch the sunrise over the Bay of Bengal. But this Bay of Bengal has these islands which emerge with the floods that come down into them. They can be stable or they can be unstable. They can be eliminated by hurricanes. So the Bangladesh government is saying, we can't keep these people and the world isn't helping us enough. And the Rohingya are caught. They cannot go back home. They clearly would be targeted, and yet the countries that are harboring them
don't want them and can't handle them. Yeah. Okay. Terrible situation.
Terrible.
Very complicated. Thank you so much for the perspective again this week. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Looking forward to it, Rob.
Yeah. Professor Elliot Tepper from Carleton University. That's the world. That's the Rob Snow Show for today. Back tomorrow after the 9 o'clock news. Friday free for all tomorrow.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.